Yeah, I'm waiting for it. Okay, sure. Good evening and welcome to the Governing Board Study Session for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. For this study session, we have 5 topics. The Deer Valley grading practice, B, human resources termination process, negotiation solution team, district staffing, student activities, funding and reviews. We're going to have the public to ask questions, so you got to make sure that you state your name, or there's a paper if you want to look at the 5 topics and check which topic you want to ask questions for. I also ask to please respect to all opinions and concerns. I call to meet the order at 6 o'clock.
Hey, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with moving items 3A, B in front of 2A, B, C, D, E.
You want to move what?
Pardon me?
Well, you want to move on the agenda from the study session, you mean?
Well, we're at the adoption of the agenda, so what I would like to do is adopt the agenda moving items 3A and B in front of 2A, B, C, D, and E.
I would say no because
You
we're
don't
going
get
to
to say
be.
no. We need to
Well,
see
why
if
would
there's
we
going to
do
be a
that for
second.
well, we need a second. then we
Anyone
can
wants to
discuss it.
second that?
Yes.
So I don't know why we would do that. The whole point of this.
But we have a second, so are we going to vote or?
Well, we can discuss it before we vote, I would assume, unless you want us just to vote based on, we're told to.
Okay, so so all those in favor?
Well, we need to discuss why are we going to move those
My
when the
reason-
public.
My
And the-
reason for that is that that information would be at the beginning, something that is highly important and we'll be able to go through, and that would leave A, B, C, D, and E open till 11:55 or whatever that number is, but I'd really like to make sure that we get the opportunity to listen to the summer program report, and most certainly at the beginning of the school year, our Safe Schools Update Report. I'd like to be able to do that first.
Well,
That's my reasons for
The
that.
whole reason we had moved the reports to a study session was because the public was tired of having to wait hours and hours and hours and hours for a topic that they were waiting for because there were hours and hours of reports. And so that was the whole purpose. And then some members of the governing board decided to move every topic for discussion to this meeting. So if we now have our public, which we already have some public wanting to speak, we're putting them in that position where, again, they will have to wait hours and hours and hours of presentations and may or may not actually get to have discussion on the topics that were moved here to discuss.
Well, I'm pretty sure as long as we don't editorialize on A, B, C, D, and E,
Well-
that we can get through them, but I'm pretty sure that the majority, and I'll use that word, of parents, especially parents, would love to hear a Safe Schools Update report before 10 o'clock tonight. So that's my reason for asking the move, and anyone else can chime
Okay,
in.
and my reason is, I know I had a lot of community members and staff asking, because these topics were already in a board meeting, and board members moved it to a study session. So I think it's fair that we do this first because they've been waiting for this from a previous board meeting. Any other board member have anything to say?
I would just like to say that the district reports are pretty much a presentation. They have a stop and an end. I think the study session topics could be different lengths of discussion based on on where we decide to go with them. And I think what we're trying to do here is get these reports just done, get out of the way so the parents can hear about the summer program report and the Safe Schools update report before moving on to more open-ended items.
Okay, so, Mr. Carver, do you have something to say?
May I ask how many public speakers we have today?
So far, we have two, but publics are free to come up and state their name if they don't have a form.
I understand. So I think the problem that we have here, the core issue is that we've had folks on the board openly say that they don't care what the policies are in governing the governing board when it comes to our conduct and how to deal with things in a business fashion. So I completely understand Ms. Ordway's concern and Ms. Simichek's concern with wanting to get the district report said, because A through E have the potential to keep us here until midnight when we have to end. I want to get them heard. Yes, I'm the one that agreed to move them to the study session. But as Ms. Simichek said, A and B have a start and a stop, and A through E likely do not. So that's my thought on it.
So disingenuous.
Okay, so I'll call for the vote then. If you want to move A and B, the district report, right, first, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those that oppose, say nay.
I will gladly say nay, and I will say this is an obvious setup, exactly what I predicted when they forced these items to this session, that we would not get to actually discuss them based on them being hidden behind long reports. So absolutely not.
I will say nay.
Great job, nice setup.
I will say nay for the reason because I have a lot of community members and staff that they're waiting for these topics because they were already moved. So we got 3-2, right? 3 yes and 3 nay. Okay, so we're going to start with the district report 2023 summer program report. Who's presenting that?
President Paperman, members of the board. This will be a quick report. We just want to ensure that our community knows how much we appreciate their participation in our summer programs. As you know, we had 3 different types of summer programs: enrichment, intervention, and academic. You can see the programs under each of those where students participated. In our Community Education Rocks camps, we had Art Rocks, Science Rocks, Mandarin Rocks, Spanish Rocks, Theater Rocks, Music Rocks, and we were just rocking it out. And you can see that we had, just about 260 students participate in each of those programs. In our sensational summer camps, that's basically our childcare with many wonderful things that happen. We had 801 students with 45 preschool students, and you can see they went on weekly field trips. They had presentations from guest speakers. It was a very well-received summer program. In our gifted, we offered 4 different gifted programs, 2 in gifted puzzlements. You can see the number of students, 69 at grades 3, 1-3, 48 grades 4-6, and then our gifted Camp Create, 54 and 60 students who participated. The first one, gifted puzzlements, was at no cost to children. The next one was our amazing, first time ever, Taipei Chinese Culture Camp. We had 290 students participate in that. There was great diversity. We had student volunteers who also participated, and then 15 of our own Deer Valley teachers supported our Taiwanese teachers. WestMech is an amazing middle school program where we had 60 students who participated in the Career Exploration Camp. You can see on the right corner, those are the different types of careers that they were able to explore over that week, and this was well received by our middle school students. For our EL learners, which our EL population has grown exponentially. We had 116 students in 1st through 5th grade who participated in the Writers' Workshop, and the goal of the program is not only to teach content, but the grade level language of that content and the study skills that go along with it. You can see what our first, second, third, and fourth, fifth grade students worked on over those 3 weeks. We had 34 incoming 6th through 12th grade students, EL students in our writers workshop, and you can see the focus there was on American civil rights. Our intervention, Jumpstart, and ELA Boost programs, we had just over 1,300 children participate. You can see by school the number of children who participated in that intervention. And then the programs were our ELA Boost, which was really an intensive remediation for reading literacy, ELA Math intervention, and then we had really great fun with our STEM enrichment and athletics. Our extended school year is our special education program. We had 101 students who participated in this. You can see some of the things that they were able to do, and this is an annual program for us each year. Our Southwest Behavioral Health and Services program supported 32 children in grades K through 6 and 14 children in high school. We were also able to have some of our high school students who supported the elementary chill skill group, and that was a benefit to both groups of kids. Then we go to our high schools for course extension. These are for children who may not have had a passing score. They were identified based on some criteria, and they could extend that spring semester to complete work and show learning and actually attain their credit. So 111 students at Goldwater, 70 at Deer Valley, 63 at Mountain Ridge. And then we had 2 schools, Goldwater and Deer Valley High School, who also offered credit recapture at the beginning of the summer. And we had 50 students at Goldwater and 62 students at Deer Valley High School. And if you can just see that there were 75 courses recaptured at Goldwater and 87 courses recaptured at Deer Valley High School, this means those students were able to get on their transcripts that they had successfully passed those courses. If you look at that previous slide, you can see also recovered credits for students who participated in course extension, 90 students, 70 students, and 63 students. This is an amazing way to help kids earn credit on their transcript. Our high school summer school is our online program. We had 760 student enrollments at high school and 337 middle school students who are going to be moving into high school who try and take some courses to get ahead so their schedules open up. Our middle school program is also a hybrid online program. We had 63 students from 10 schools participate with a 94% passing rate. And then Pathways is our afternoon evening program. We had 331 students participated in the June session, 121 students participated in the July session, and 39 students participated in geometry honors. You can also see the number of credits that were earned for those students as well. So in total, 5,320 Deer Valley Unified students participated in our summer programs this past summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan, for the amazing presentation that students have variety of programs that they can attend. Does anyone have any questions? Or even community members, if you have any questions, feel free. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next one, item B, a Safe School Update Report.
Good evening, President Paperman, members of the board, Dr. Finch, Mr. O, and I are here, and we are pleased to be here tonight to provide you a brief slideshow with an update on safe schools. And with that, Mr. O, you can take it away.
Push the button. Okay. There I am. Okay. I'm Joey Onasorge, the new director of Administrative Leadership and Services. I'm very happy to be here tonight to give the board a very brief overview of what we've been doing so far. I've been on the job for a couple of months. I've been very impressed with the Deer Valley Unified School District and the staff I've been able to work with thus far. So, As you can see on my agenda tonight, some of the things that we'll cover will be the school safety drills that we typically, and Deer Valley does typically every year. Maybe a few things that you will see differently. Some of the things that I've been trying to do early on in my positions is doing and making some campus visits. We'll talk about the safety grants that are in place right now. Some will be putting in place very soon. And we'll talk about some mental health awareness, threat assessment, and also some training, some scenarios that I've been able to put staff through just to get them thinking about and preparing for, what-if situations and things like that. And we'll give a time for a Q&A at the end. So some of the things that that you're probably already used to and heard before, we have emergency response plans, ERPs, that we have each school update annually. So basically our staff in all of our buildings have been able to look at their ERPs and look at their grounds and their staff and things like that. And they've been able to update those and get those into the district office, ALS, in a timely manner. Things we look for is, do you have anything you're doing differently in your emergency plans, your evacuation drills? You do anything differently in your lockdowns and lockouts? We call the main three. And so as the board knows, as every school building has to complete once a month an evacuation drill. So when I get around, I look at those, I look at, okay, what is the communication to your building? What is a response time to the location that you're moving to from where you are, where the student is, where a staff member is, whenever that signal and that alert goes off, and then what's the response time to that location? Lockdown drills, one of the things we're really focusing on this year are lockdown drills, and what does that mean for a classroom? What does that mean for a room that is not a classroom? It's not instructionally managed. It could be maybe a cafeteria. It could be non-instructional time, as in where are they moving and how are they moving, how quickly they're moving in an emergency situation, if it's in a passing period or maybe during lunchtime or before school, after school. Lockout drills, what's the difference between, the lockout situations and also in a lockdown. And then, every school, after they do perform a drill, they have to put it on a log sheet. So that's kind of the accountability for them to ALS is are they, whenever they do a drill, are they logging it down? Are there any kind of issues that they have where they have to, I require them, and they know this from previous experiences, they have to have a debrief every time that they have a drill. So how smoothly did things go? And then what changes are you making after you perform a drill? So as we move on, in my campus visits, again, I've gotten around to at least 18 of our schools thus far. And like today, for example, I met with staff at Boulder Creek High School. So I talked with administration and also safety staff, security staff. What are their procedures on these drills? What are any kind of safety concerns? Could be a safety concern of our doors not latching that go to inside buildings. Do they have those concerns? Do they have any kind of perimeter concerns where gates are not locking, or they may see students that are leaving in areas and times that they should not be leaving? Some of the elementary procedures that I watch could be before school, whenever parents are dropping off or buses are dropping off, those arrival times, those dismissal times. Do administrators have concerns about maybe dropping off and locations and anything that would be going outside of the procedures that the administrator requires? So those are things I look for, and I try to solve problems as the principal contacts me and say, hey, Joey, can you come over and look at this dismissal time? These are some of my concerns, and maybe the pathway or things like that. So, and then it also is in the plans, again, to have drug dog searches, random drug dog searches at our high schools. And that will be very similar to what it was in the past, where we would have searches in the physical education locker rooms, or the athletic locker rooms, the parking lots, could be on the campus at certain times. So those are things that are definitely in the plans with the company that we have used in the past. So moving on to the safety grants, we do have a new safety grant this year called Stronger Connections Grant. It's a 3-year cycle, and the district has been awarded over $3 million for this grant in this 3-year cycle. So we looked at, a team of us looked at the panorama data, and we looked at what kinds of data are we looking at, in choosing those schools. It was not easy. There were 18 schools that applied for that grant. So, we looked at student data as far as number of disciplinary issues that those schools were having involving aggression, maybe classroom school disruption, disorderly conduct, and threats, and those things there. And so, we were able to only be able to award 6 schools in this, and you can see those schools were Constitution, Esperanza, Mirage, Sunrise, Highland Lakes, and Diamond Canyon. So each one of those schools were awarded a SSO presence in support in those schools. So we have worked through a kind of contentious process getting started and getting those SSOs on campus. They're working with different precincts and law enforcement departments. We finally got presence on all of our schools last week, so we're very proud of that. We have varying coverages from 1 hour a day, 5 days a week, to 4 hours, or to 4 days a week to 5 days a week. Just depends on the availability of officers and in those precincts. So that's off to a good start, and I'm in communication with the principals and the SSOs in those particular schools. So that's going very well, very well so far.
Could I get you just to stop for a second? What is SSO?
A student support officer, basically.
Different than our SRO?
Safety officer, yeah.
And are they the same officers?
There are different officers. It's based upon, largely based upon off-duty management officers. So they're not, obviously, in most cases, in these cases here, they're not working during their shift, they're off-duty. So it's based upon availability of those officers wanting to work the schools. Like, for example, Constitution and Esperanza, Mirage, Sunrise, those are in one particular precinct, in the Phoenix precinct. So that was based upon them getting enough officers interested and available, basically, 2 days a week in those schools.
I was just wondering because it's, as it moves forward, it's a good thing for the officers to be able to build that relationship with the kids.
Yes.
'Cause that's kind of how the behavior changes. But thank you very much.
So one of the, one of the things I really emphasize with our principals and with the officers that I'm working with is, okay, the number one thing is safety on the campus. Walking the campus every single day throughout the entire time that they're there, making sure that indoors, outdoors, that they're looking for things, or being vigilant on different things that they could see. They're talking with their principal and making sure that they know the areas to look for, the problems that they could potentially have or have had in the past. But also just building those relationships, talking with staff, talking with students, building the rapport with students, and, talking with parents as parents maybe are dropping off or picking up during the day. So that relationship that they're building, I believe, is one of the most important things with this grant here and this opportunity. We are currently with a safety grant. We're currently in the second 3-year cycle of that. This is the first year of that 3-year second cycle. So that's going very, very well. It's a well-established program. It's been here for, like I said, for 3 years. So I'm very, very proud of the fact that that's going very well, and it's really working out itself. One of the things that we have new this year with the City of Peoria is an agreement with them in providing SLOs. Now that's a student liaison officer, so a lot of the same responsibilities, but a lot of the responsibility there is building those relationships again with staff and with students and making sure that rapport is established each and every day. And so the City of Peoria is funding majority of that. So we're very fortunate to be able for them to be able to provide the officer and also provide the funding for that primarily. So that's going very, very well with Terramar, with West Wing. And then we're waiting to hear on an SVPP program, the School Violence Prevention Program grant, and that basically will, if we are awarded that grant, we should find out this month. That should give updates and additional and newer cameras on our campuses. As I get around to different campuses, and this will be at the high school, we're going to update, those cameras. There's just one thing, there's not enough cameras. The cameras are older. Some of the cameras go down, so you can't see in some areas there where you need to be able to see. There's some blind spots, so hopefully we get awarded this grant and we can really make some really crucial updates for our administrators and our law enforcement that are in and around the buildings every single day.
And Mr. O, I can just clarify too, so on the safety grant, not the Strong Connections grant, but the safety grant, that's an SRO. And so that is a dedicated officer, and that particular position, Ms. Ordway, is at Deer Valley Middle, Goldwater, and Paseo Hills.
Okay, moving on with the presentation. So moving more towards the student side, one of the things that has been a big need, especially in the last couple of years, is really emphasize and provide as much support as we can for mental health wellness. And that's something that I think we really need to focus on and be really vigilant on with our students and making sure we see any signs of support that a student may need, not just academically, but socially, emotionally, and meet those needs every single day. So, one of the things that we focus on, we need to make sure that everyone is trained. So if you're going to use preventive type measures, then you got to make sure that your staff are trained. So we do, and we will provide some updated staff suicide prevention training just to be able to help staff identify warning signs. It doesn't have to be a teacher, it could be a counselor, it could be a support staff, just to be able to identify some warning signs of potential suicidal behavior. So, that just comes with experience. That comes with talking with students every single day. Have a student be an advocate for others, I think, is very important. As much as students will talk and they communicate in various forms, if they can advocate for themselves, that is one of the key components of that. So we do provide that, and just really create an awareness campus-wide and district-wide. As I'm sure you're aware that we had kind of a kickoff to mental health wellness with the presenter, well-known presenter of Alex Boyer, and just a couple of weeks ago, just kind of kicked off the year and talking with our schools, our high schools and middle schools on mental health and really letting students know that they have self-worth. And one of his big sayings is, "You are a 10." So just making sure that students feel needed, wanted when they come on campus, that they feel safe on campus, that they know there are resources available, that if they need some assistance and help, that we are there for them. One of the things coming up in the month of October is a program called Speak Up, Stand Up, and Save a Life Youth Conference. That's at Grand Canyon University. So that's going to be available to our students. So they are aware of that. And we hope we get as many of our students turn out as possible for that. So I'm excited about attending that myself. And then, as you know, Brendan Salisbury, Senior Barry Goldwater, is a huge advocate for mental health. And I've not gotten the opportunity yet to be able to speak to that young man, but I am very excited about having a conversation there. And I know that one of his big visions and goals would be to have wellness centers on all of our high school campuses, which is huge. So that just would be another layer of support that we could provide for our students. And then, the intervention part, we do have wellness counselors that are available to our students in need, and that's a service that they know they have, and that's available to them. We have Katie McPherson, who is an expert. I know that's the district has used Katie in different capacities. So, she would be someone that we can lean on, rely on to provide some training, and just someone that can help us on, dive into what are we doing, what are we currently doing, and what do we need to do better, more, and differently. And then with our MTSS program we have, which is, relatively new to, it used to be called RTI and stuff, and so, that's kind of new to, I think, across the nation. As I worked in Illinois as a high school principal in the last couple of years, that was new to us, but it's something that, you can, it's a service and it's a support, not just academically, but it is support for students behaviorally. We use Panorama to look at the data, and it's just a huge program for us to be able to provide student interventions based upon that data.
And I would just add to that as well that the safety grant that we referenced in the previous slide that provides the 3 SROs to those schools also provides for a number of counselors and a couple social workers at a number of our other Deer Valley campuses.
So moving on in the presentation, I think, I know that anytime you have a tool that you used in your educational system, it always needs to be reviewed, and can we do things differently, maybe in a better way, maybe a better program. So one of the things that was brought to my attention early on is our threat assessment tool. And the district has what I would consider a very good tool now, but brought to my attention that maybe there needs to be some updates, or maybe looking at different programs that could be better. We could better serve our students. And so I've been talking with our lead psychologist, and it really feels like, we need to explore different things and different programs. The current tool is very good, but I think it has limitations as I look at it. So we're looking at a program right now that could be more of a standardized process. It's more research-based. It's web-based. There's web-based training. It does involve a lot of upfront training, but I really believe that our administrators and our team, threat assessment team, needs to have additional training, and obviously your new administrators need that training. So we're in the process of doing that. Many districts are looking at their current tool and their current system, and is it the best? Well, that's something that you have to decide as a team. So, is the tool that you're using, is there fidelity, or is there something that you can use differently and better that has more fidelity? We know that there's a huge need for threat assessment, and there's been an increase in cases. We can look at that. We know the data is there for the last couple of years. So that's just something, just identifying early signs of, okay, is there a student in need? Do we need to put system in place to be able to help that student or help these students? So that's kind of something we're looking at, and I can definitely keep the board updated on that as we make our progress through that. So one of the things I'm really diving into, and I really feel like our administrators and our support staff are really taking advantage of now some of the training that we're providing. So one of the things we talk about, and what Mrs. Zerback would call his huddle, every Wednesday, we look at some scenario training. So you can look at data, and you can look at maybe your past practices all you want, but get people thinking about scenarios. So one of the things we've been doing is looking at scenario training with our administrators, athletic directors, secretaries, and we've been looking at situations. Okay, what if this happens? What if situations? For example, what if someone walks onto campus that's not supposed to be there? How do you handle that situation? Put them in real life situations, put them in groups, let them talk about it, then we talk about it as a whole group. And just make sure that your support staff know what their roles are whenever you have these emergency situations. So everyone needs to know what their plan is, what their role is, and communication, as we know, is very vital. And one of the things that we have to make sure that we do, it's a requirement for our grants, is we have to have continued training for our administrators, our counselors, our law enforcement. It's a requirement. So it just puts us in a better position to be able to handle and deal with different situations. One of the things that Mr. Zerbach and I have talked about is making sure that our security staff at our high schools, that they are properly trained. So one of the things in my experiences is, okay, do we know how to deal with student conflict? So there's going to be those times when you have student conflicts. Do you know how to de-escalate situations and the conversations that students are having? So that would be some kind of a security staff, because they're out there in the passing periods. They're out there, walking the grounds, and they see those situations, hear those conversations more than maybe any other staff do. So. And then we started some tabletop exercises there in our department, and we involve everyone from ALS to communications to the business department. And we've already had one tabletop scenario where we talked about, okay, what happens if a school has a power outage from maybe in that morning, and your students and your parents are dropping off students, and the students being dropped off in buses, and now you have a power outage. Maybe it happened the night before. What do you do? What are the steps you need to take to be able to communicate that out to the public and to everyone involved to be able to manage that situation? School threats, obviously, is a big topic. And now we're going through monsoon season right now, so that's very new to me. We didn't have monsoons in Illinois, but we had storms in Illinois. So that's something that's kind of a new scenario for me. And then lockdowns, and then reunification. So last week, a team of us went to was it CCV, the main campus there, and we looked at our reunification. So if we had to relocate to that area, our high schools did, and in our middle schools, then do we know the process? I'm not sure in the last time we had to relocate to that location, but do we know what the process is? If we have to have a high school and a middle school have to be able to relocate there, can we keep them separated? Because you have high school age and you have junior high age. You have to have staff that can manage all that. That just takes time, and that's going to roll out really quick if you have to relocate. So those are some things that we've been working on in my 2 months on the job, and I'm very excited about continuing to move through the process. And it's my goal to be able to, in the next couple of months, to be able to get to every school and work with those administrators and staff to be able to answer questions, problem solve, and help make their campus much safer. You have questions for me?
Thank you. And
Thank
I
you
will
for-
just add, President Paperman and the board, I did want to thank you for the approval of the budget for this year, which did allocate additional support to ALS, so that we now do have Mr. O, who is the director and oversees the safety and operations, and Ms. Crooks, who does the manager of the activities and athletics. As you can see, some of what Mr. O has talked about, his ability to be on the campuses, to respond quickly, is something that is improved in what we've had in the past, and some of that is due to him being able to focus on that particular area. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the presentation. I do
President
have
Paperman?
two questions.
One question.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
one-
did you have questions?
Yeah,
I apologize.
I do have two questions. One is, does every school or every campus, do they have a safety committee, like a every high school or every elementary, do they have a safety committee?
Yes, every school is supposed to have that committee that they can work with in these situations. Yeah, that is a requirement.
Okay, so that's put in place.
Yes.
Another question, I get a lot from parents, if there's like an emergency, how fast is communicated with parents? Like, what's the process for them to be notified?
So one of the things that we added this year for administrators is an app called Slack. So on that app, anytime an administrator, and only administrators are on this app, so anytime there's a kind of a situation, whether it's a high emergency, maybe not quite so high, they communicate that, and ALS gets that information. So based upon that information, then we put things in place. So, does it get to a level to where we need to? We've had a couple of situations where potential threats to schools. So we did communicate that. We work as a team whenever we have those situations, and then we get out. We get on the Google Doc, which thank goodness we have Google Docs today, and we can look at communication. So members of the communication department will help us in getting the right information out there, factual information, and just kind of disprove any kind of rumors that are out there, and to get that out to the parents as quickly as possible. It does take a little bit of time, but we want to make sure we do it right and do it right the first time.
Thank you. Mr. Carver, you had a question?
Thank you, President Paperman. Yes, Mr. O, I'm just curious, out of our 41 campuses, how many of them get to benefit from SSO, SRO, SLO? Not necessarily by category, but just,
We are about 16, 17 campuses right now. 16,
and that includes the 8 new ones this year
Yes,
between the grant
yeah,
and
yes.
Peoria? Okay.
yes.
Any other questions, board member? Mrs. Fisher? Okay, so I have a parent, I believe, from Belair, Josh. Right. Can you please state first and last name for the record? Thank you.
Tiffany Hawkins. I got some questions, and this will pertaining to Joey. With the bullying going on, you said in this data form that there's a panorama using behavioral data, and that there's like you just said, there's a system of tracking where teachers communicate with each other, staff. How come we don't have any documentation on ours? If there's being tracked, if there's panorama data or putting all these resources in, and we're finding out we don't have documentation. Can you answer for that? How we would get documentation?
There is documentation on bullying. There are bullying forums that parents have access to.
The online portal?
They do have access online for those. They can also go into the schools and they can get access to those forms.
I have done that this entire week. I've gone to the schools, the online portal, and I have verbally gone to our schools. Your online portal doesn't work, per Julie Frank. So how are we able to report and it get data if that portal isn't working?
Do you want me to take it, Joey? So the portal, that is the, for internal and not external, but there is access to the external public. And we are aware of your concern, Ms. Hawkins. You've been emailing us and we are aware and we're working through that.
I haven't heard from anybody, so that's why I got the question of, you guys state that you
We've
gather
emailed you several times.
documentation and data, and that data is then used. So I'm just trying to get where that data is being documented.
Thank you.
Okay. And then on the next thing, you guys have security, the stronger connections, communication, talking with the staff. And when we have you guys that don't understand what the policy is on bullying, how do we then bring that towards and teach them when you guys don't understand what bullying and harassment is? We have different definitions.
Ms. Hawkins, again, I don't think question for us. I think that you have given us a concern that we are working through.
Well, I think the public would want to know where the documentation is going. If the portal is not working and you guys say that you guys have all these avenues for these to prevent and create safety, we don't have safety for kids if there's, you can't verbally say it to your principal, you can't verbally in an email, and the online portal doesn't work either. So those would be the 3 avenues of ways to report bullying. And then you guys say you have data, but if it's not being documented in any 3 forms, how are you getting this data?
President Paperman, again, I would tell you that this is a concern that the Hawkins have brought to the district. We have been in communication with them and we are working through it.
Okay, thank you. So you're working with the process that she's asking for? Okay. Do you want to say something, Dr. Finch?
Yep, Dr. Z is correct. I actually emailed you today.
Okay.
Yep, we are working on making sure the portals work. So our technology cooperates with the outside. Portal is an internal machine. And we also, as he explained, have access that needs to be fixed. So
Okay.
we're working on it.
So they're working on it. Okay.
Okay, we'll see.
You may, you may go and speak. Can you state your first and last name for the record?
Yes, Joshua Hawkins. You mentioned in there, I saw on one of the slides about a wellness counselor. Is that correct, Mr. Orsarge?
That's correct.
Right. Can you explain the difference between a wellness counselor versus the existing campuses currently?
I can certainly do that. So on our high school campuses, we have counselors that were present before we had wellness counselors, and those are primarily academic counselors that work with the students and their families. The wellness counselors, we looked into probably in about 2019 when we started to have more formal conversations about teen mental health. And so we worked with Southwest Behavioral in order to create a partnership where we could have wellness counselors that truly work with crisis situations for our students at our high school campuses.
All right. And is that just at high school, or is that all schools within the district?
We have a dedicated wellness counselor that are at our high schools. We have a number of other schools where we have a partnership with Southwest Behavioral. Although there's not someone usually, and Dr. Galligan can add in if some details, but usually it's not someone who's there full-time.
Is that
They're there on a
something we're
rotating
look-
basis.
Is that something we're looking to rectify in the future with possible funding to have one of those wellness counselors at every campus?
Yeah, well, we look to provide as many counselors as we can. That is right now largely due to staffing. And so our behavioral health partners, they have struggled, like many other organizations, to staff. And so once that staffing piece is improved, then hopefully we can add more.
But I do have a second separate question. I noticed on the slide it mentioned Katie McPherson is a cyberbully expert. Does she also provide information and guidance for in-person bullying? Like training and resources in regards to similarities between in-person versus cyberbullying and how they relate.
Sure. And many folks in the room know Katie. Katie has been involved with us for almost 4.5 years now. Katie has expertise in teen mental health overall. In general, her focus is on social media and the impact of social media on teen mental health. That said, she does do work that is broad in general to support teen mental health, but her focus is on social media.
Okay. I think that might be all the questions I had, at least at this time. Thank you.
I had one more question, Tiffany Hawkins. We have been reverted to what a safety plan is, so I wanted to get clarification what a safety plan would be, because it's not something that's in the handbook. Is that something that you guys use? And the only thing I found in the safety plan is under the threat assessment plan. So what would be a safety plan that you would put a child under that was being bullied?
That would be a plan that school officials work with ALS, the district office, in putting together a plan that would be in the best interest of students to keep them safe and that would not harm any students. So that would be something that we work together with this at the site level for a student.
Wouldn't policy already be for making sure that the child is in a safe manner and has proper people that they can go and talk to, that we wouldn't need to create a different safety plan for them to feel safe to go talk to people?
That could be an alternative plan, yes.
But I'm not understanding the safety plan. You stated it was for someone to be able to feel safe and go talk and communicate. That's why we have counselors, psychologists, committees. What's this additional plan for?
But it's also to protect students as well.
What do you mean by protect? Because they're getting bullied. The protection would be to then go after the people who are actually doing the bullying, like community service, loss of recess. There's different forms of consequences for bullying. So wouldn't that be the safety protection, is making sure that the bully is getting consequences for actions and not putting a person who was bullied on a safety plan?
Yes, so it's my understanding, and I've been on the job for 2 months now, but it's my understanding that those safety plans are largely for students that, yes, are the bullies, are the people that have intentions of harm potentially on campuses.
So the school's saying my child's bullied?
It could be the other student as well. I would add on, and the board is aware, just like academics, we have plans in place for all of our students. We call that Tier 1 for everyone. And then there's always going to be a subsection of students, a smaller percentage, that may need small group plans or individual plans. And again, that is a common piece that would run across both the academic side and the behavior side.
Dr. Z, is that the PBIS you're referring to?
PBIS is part of MTSSB.
Okay, I do have a question. I did some research on the PBIS, and I contacted the AZ director for PBIS, and because I was trying to get a breakdown of the tiers and whatever, because it's not in your handbook, but you do have other schools that have different handbooks that have it in there. So that's where I found it. But they stated that you guys have not gone through a training. You guys went through a training, couldn't come to a decision on what you guys wanted into it and how you wanted to place it in. So there was no training that was done on PBIS, but we have it in our handbook as a framework you guys use.
That would be inaccurate. We have had training in the past. In fact, we had the training last year, and we have another training that is scheduled soon. So that's an inaccurate statement that you're making.
I don't know. I'm just reverting what the AZ director for PBIS had stated when I called. So that means you would be calling her inaccurate. But I would just like to know about the PBIS, because if we don't have training, we can't fully institute this framework into the handbook. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, community members or board members? Mrs. Fisher?
So you talked a lot about the standard drills that we have all the time. In recent years, those drills were actually used to target, to herd and target. Why are we still doing it if that's the case? Why are we not changing our methodologies to protect our students rather than just sticking with the same old, herding? Because,
I can answer that one.
okay,
We don't announce to the public we're having a safety drill on Tuesday at 2:00 for that very reason. So you practice, the reason you practice
No, I
is so you can
understand the
do it
reason for
correctly under
practicing.
pressure.
But if they're used to us every month, they know we're going to have one every.
We have 31 days in each month.
Yeah, it's going to still become a pattern. I'm just concerned that, is there a better way, a better opportunity? Have you looked at that? Because, one of the big things is that they do. I mean, I think, there was one that used that method, pull the fire drill, wait till they all come out, and then kill them. And it.
And those
basically-
procedures have changed, Ms. Fisher, which you know of. We
What?
presented on that in the past, so that particular procedure, and which happened at Stoneman Douglas, that changed across the nation in terms of how folks will respond to some of those things because of that.
Right, but he just said we were going back to that. That's what we were doing, is all these drills. Are we or are we not doing those then?
There are drills that occur, yes, to practice the procedures that we do.
They're also required by the state.
But I'm just thinking there's got to be, there's got to be a better way to do them without setting up our kids. There's so many innovations out there. I've heard of them repeatedly over the years, but I don't see that we're implementing any of them.
What is an example of that, Ms. Fisher?
Cameras, segregated, using the cameras, smoke screens.
Alice training.
There's alternative methods rather than having just the last one that I saw that I thought was really interesting was, rather than having a drill where everybody just floods out, they have a system where they're actually in communication. Quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3. So there's not just a mass exodus of kids running out.
And that's referred to as menu-based response, and that is, you had mentioned ALICE, and so ALICE is a framework for menu-based. And last year we presented on that for our menu-based options, and so we have begun to look into that beginning last year, and will continue with this year. It is a shift. That's a shift in mindset, and so we went as a team, just as a refresher for anyone who's joining us new this year, to the citywide training. The Phoenix Sun sponsored that, and we had probably about 6 participants that went to the trainers session, and so that's something that we continue to look into. And so yes, that's referred to as menu-based.
So do we have an idea of when that type of stuff will be implemented in Deer Valley? I mean,
Well,
is that
we've already
correct?
started some of that, but again, that is a delicate one for us in terms of what we will say to folks in the external public, because those are procedures that are critical to keep our kids safe.
Mrs. Paperman, at some point, maybe we could get that executive session so we can discuss those strategies that are not for everyone to know, so they actually would work if we needed to.
We can have an executive
normally do.
session on that.
We normally
Yeah.
do.
yeah.
This is just different. Um, I am a little concerned after hearing public comments. I just looked up the suicide rate of ages from 10 to 17 have increased 65%. Bullying is generally what causes that. And so hearing that the wellness counselors are targeted at the high school, and I understand it's probably more likely high school students, although during the whole COVID, when everybody was out, I actually read more about younger individuals, 10-year-olds committing suicide. So my concern is that if we're not addressing that, at some level by high school, they've matured enough to where it's like, yeah, whatever you think, whatever of me, I don't care. Some know, but some have that. When you're 10, none of them have that, or it's rare that they have that security. So I would really like to see a little bit more concern with some of our elementaries, because aside from who the individuals that spoke tonight, that is one of the largest complaints I get is bullying. And, it's bullying across, from students, from staff, from whatever. So I am just concerned that we're missing the mark by just not addressing it.
What do you mean, Ms. Fisher, when we say we're not addressing it?
Well, I just don't, from what parents report, it sounds like we put them on these plans, or we, and we almost, I mean, I guess if I had to use an example, we had a student who, and this was years back, who was being bullied, openly bullied, and another student stood up and defended him, stopped them from basically spray painting the kid. And the student who stopped the interaction was suspended. That to me is, well, one, it sends a message that, don't interfere with the bully or you'll get punished. And two, don't stand up for what's right, because again, you'll get punished. Now that parent did fight that and got it reversed, but it took time. And so, but I'm hearing these stories a lot.
Do you know how long ago that was?
And then when we talk about suicide prevention, so the bullying is an issue. And I eventually, whether it's tonight or whenever, I would like to know the path of what parents are supposed to go through. Because it gave the portals internal, and then I heard you guys talk about verbal or email, and those aren't being addressed. So I would like to know a clear path for parents.
And just
where
as a point of
the path is. So and it doesn't have to necessarily be tonight, but we need a set path, and it's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and so on. It can't be step 1, step 2, step 3. We don't like that answer. We're going to send you to step 1, step 2, step 3. And no, then we're going to send you to 1, 2, 3. You get to 4. Now we go back to 1, because then it just becomes a frustration, which is what I've heard, and not just this year, but multiple years. So those are some of the concerns that it sounds like we're talking about them, but if I'm hearing them multiple years, I have no other choice but to wonder, are we actually addressing them? And is it unified across 30, whatever schools are at that day? Do you see what I'm saying?
Not exactly. I guess I would disagree from the standpoint. I don't know the specific situation you're addressing from years ago. that said our bullying policy and procedures, they can be found in the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. The form that was mentioned in the portal as an internal, that was just one of the platforms that Mr. O had mentioned. The form is available to the external public too, and it has been available. It's on our website, which you can get. It was just mentioned as far as the portal being one of the platforms that school folks could access it at. And as far as the counselor support, what are your thoughts about the counselor support at the elementary schools?
Well, I would think we needed some, at least some level, even if it's a roaming or a roving counselor who does multiple schools, something of that nature, because we have, I'm not trying to be critical of what you're doing now. I understand this is a hard thing to answer, but I'm hearing situations that my daughter was in 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Well, okay, it's my middle daughter, so it would have been 15 years ago. And the same responses, and even then it got to the board and was ignored. And it ended in a suicide attempt. And it's continued on, and I could pick multiple students that have faced the similar impact, but it's the same conversation, but I don't see a difference in actions. And so that's, I guess, my concern
Okay.
is that, and I know it's a hard thing to address. You can't always say, this kid's gonna deal with something one way or the other, but it tends to be in pockets, in specific schools or specific areas. And honestly, well, back in my day, it was addressed based on who knew who, and that wasn't as far as students, that was as far as staff members, and board and whatnot. But I would hope at some point we get past that and it becomes a student-centered, students become the priority. And I'm just concerned after hearing this. So
I think
Well, I would
one
just-
thing, let me add one more thing. I think we're missing a really big point that Deer Valley has done really for about the last 5 years is put emphasis on student social skills, actually teaching how to handle behaviors up with your peers. We've been doing this at least 5 years now. So if you don't start with a foundation when they're younger and learn to talk about how to fish for themselves rather than fish for them,
Right,
then
well,
students can prevent their
I
own
see the
behavior.
foundation, but
It's the buzzword of SEL.
Yeah.
That's not popular anymore.
problem
but-
is the buzzword SEL has turned out to, I now know how to play the system, and I can now double victimize my victim.
Well, it turns out that actually the whole point of SEL is foundation is to have the student be able to understand how to regulate themselves, how to go to adults for help, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't start that young, then they
And be an advocate
have
for themselves.
suicide ideation. I agree.
That is the point. However, in the time that that's been brought in and processed and all that, what has occurred is crime rates have gone through the roof, bullying situations have gone through the roof.
Our data says the
Suicides-
opposite, actually.
Suicides have increased 65%. From 2010 to now, because I just looked it up, they increased
Not in Deer Valley.
71%.
Yeah.
And you can't say not in Deer Valley.
Not in Deer
Because
Valley.
we
Our
have had
bullying,
suicides in
our
Deer Valley,
data is actually
and-
showing the negative curve.
And we have some that have moved away as a result. So we're not
I'm
in a
not
bubble
doubting
that
it.
we are protected from our students being, so somehow what we're doing isn't working. Either we're bringing in the SEL and completely removing discipline, so now it's becoming a manipulation. How can I get away with something? There's got to be a balance. We can't just completely throw out discipline and then say, well,
Yeah,
we're teaching
we
them
don't,
how
uh,
to,
we don't
Yeah,
remove
again,
discipline.
how to deal with it,
No.
because it does not work.
I
When
guess
you
it-
have to go to school and face your aggressor, and they're not facing a consequence no matter what, I'm sorry, but they're sitting in the background going, I'll wait till they're not looking. Because there are some kids that will do that. And it's an awful thing, but when you're the kid facing it, it's worse.
Again, Ms. Fisher, I don't know the personal example that you gave. I'm not aware of that one from years ago. However, where I disagree again is when you say it's not working, that I believe we have a number of our counselors that are with us through the safety grant, that, just as one example, that are working very hard on the behavioral health side, working to provide the essential academic and social behaviors. That's what we have in our strategic plan to the kiddos to support mental health. We have psychologists in our district that have been providing trauma training to our administrators and to other staff members to help them have the skills in order to support our kiddos, again, with their essential social and academic behaviors. And so we see many successes with our folks. Ms. Frank, again, Mrs. Frank does a fantastic job helping process concerns that come from our parents to the schools and helping to resolve those concerns. Is it to say that we've never had an issue? No, we are always in the quest of continuous improvement, for sure. But I do see many successes by our staff members, especially in the area of MTSSB, that are working to support.
I'm sure you see a lot of successes because you're there, you're watching, and you're seeing those areas. But as a board member, last year I had at least 3 parents remove their students from our district because they just gave up. They couldn't. We've had multiple. Some of them we bring forward if we can, some we don't, some we just advise this is your path. You've got to follow this process. But to be honest, the big one is, so when does this process ever come to a fruition? And the truth is it never does. The probability that they will ever make it to the board level is virtually non-existent. They will never get certain things addressed. So, respectfully, I do see that there is some progress in some areas, there's successes. But when you're the parent for the kid that got lost in that didn't have the success, that now has to go to years of counseling, that's problematic. And when it becomes systematic, that it's brought to the attention and then still overlooked, because this kid's just not going to be the success. And we saw this in schools, over the course of a few years in one specific school, and as it was brought forward, it was flat out stated, this kid's just not going to be a success. We can move him everywhere. It's just not going to help. And so when that becomes the narrative, and it was a narrative from the top, so it's not something that's just imagined. So I'm just saying we need to find a way to catch the one that's going to fall through. And I don't know the answer, and I'm not trying to beat up on you and say you're not doing your job or whatever. I'm just saying there's got to be a way that we can catch the one that's going to fall through. There's got to be a way to catch the one that is today being tormented, or today going through the harassment, or today is thinking about there's no point in going on. That's where I'm at. And I know that we won't always catch them.
I think we do a pretty good job, but we can improve for sure. Thanks, Joe. Dr. Z.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Deer Valley grading practice. So I need a clicker, right? Oh, he needs to pull it up. Okay, so with the grading practice, for full transparency, I went back to the May 9th, 2023 board meeting. and took notes. And that was the meeting where the board voted for the traditional grading. And for full transparency, I met with a lot of teachers of what was put in place for this school year, and they provided a training video. So then I used that in the PowerPoint. And then a letter that the teachers wrote with other concerns with the grading system. So the goal for this is maybe we can come up with a solution, because what I got from different schools, not everyone is on the same place. Some staff are doing one thing in one school and some staff are doing a different thing, or, so to me, it sounds like there's still confusion with the grading system. So I'm going to, let me see this. Okay, so the first one, was at the board meeting, so I took notes of what Dr. Galligan presented, traditional grading practice, which is 0 to 100%, A through F. K1, K2 will have E, S, and U. What parents will see are percentage letter grades across all school, no hybrids. So on the bottom, I took notes from the majority of teachers that said does not mention anything about standards and rubrics. The next one, during the board meeting, Dr. Galligan presented May 9th. Standard-based grading does not use percentage, nor does it use letter grades F. This transition is not standard-based grading, this is traditional grading. So, yes? Oh, I'm sorry, did you want to? Okay, so bullet point number 2, it says it is an expectation of traditional grading across all grade level with added information to parents to be able to talk to their children as well to talk to their teachers about specific standards, and the child might not have done well on the essay or math test. So points of view from teachers for bullet point number 2, they said teachers were able to do this on Canvas. Assignments have standards listed along with the teacher's feedback. Bullet point number 3, parents will see exactly what they have seen in Power School A through F to 100%. And then teachers' feedback for that one, they said teachers have grade twice, 4, 3, 2, 1. See calculation assessment, grade slide. Teacher have to manipulate a 4-0 scale to try to fit. Let's see. Try to fit the percentage. This scale is not reliable or accurate way to communicate grades. So I'm just providing this information so the grading committee maybe can take some notes from teachers' perspective, and maybe we can move forward so everyone can be on the same page. Number 4, Dr. Gallagher presented May 9, missing work, late work, and assignment is not turned in, does not receive a 0. So for bulletin point 1, teachers' view is, what this means a student can turn in or work on the last day of school, and teachers will have to accept and grade since it is no longer missing. A 0 will be entered as a score in the assignment in the gradebook. 3 to 12, 0, 49%, no evidence. So teachers' perspective on this, bullet point 2, why would a student get a 49% if there's no work submitted? Number 5, board member Mr. Paul Carver made a motion to vote for transitional plan grading practice from Dr. Gallagher's PowerPoint presentation 2023-2024 school year, including slide 20. The slide 20 had a Power School portal for grade 1st, 2nd, grade 3rd, 6th grade, and 9th, 12th grade. On the public school slide, it states in writing, no change. Letter grades AF, no change. Percentages shown on 0 to 100% scale, no change. Citizenship marks on ESNU scale. So now I'm going to move on to what teachers provided. They provided a training video when they started in the beginning of the year that they had to implement within the grading system. So grade book categories are implemented for the 2023-2024 school year. Training video, DVUSD. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that would be great. DVUSD grading practice. So bullet point number 1, teachers will use one of 3 categories when entering scores into the gradebook. The category set by the district. So there are 3 categories according to the teachers, and these categories are set by the district. And from teachers' perspective for bullet point 1, what about Rio Salado, AP, CTE, who have other requirement categories? Bullet point 2, only the district categories will calculate in the gradebook. Teachers' feedback on this, what does assessment, coursework, and practice tell parents? So the majority of them, they said nothing. So probably because this is a new system or there's still no understanding. And I did get feedback from parents that they also don't have an understanding on these categories. Slide number 7. So this assessment weighs 80% is the first category. So this category includes items used to measure a student's proficiency toward the learning standards once the student has sufficient practice. The next bullet point, this category can include summative tests, performance assessment, reports, unit or module assessment, quizzes, long-term projects, short-term projects, presentation, capstone projects, research paper, and lab report. Third bullet point, the assessment category will make 80% students overall course grade for students in grade 3 to 12. So this is assessment is category 1. Coursework weighs 20% of students' overall grade, and this is category 2. This category is for formative work and that provides students with opportunity to learn content skills and to receive feedback on their learning. Coursework is designed to provide meaningful independent practice, reinforce learning, target, and extend learning. This category might include things just as in the class assignment, quizzes, exit tickets, check for understanding, daily activity. So teachers' feedback says if provide students just retake a test until they guess the correct answer. So that's their feedback where they're getting that students will be taking the test, the same test until they get the correct answer. Slide number 9. Third category is practice, which is weighted 0%. This category includes formative students' work that students complete while in the process of learning specific skills. Students' work that is done inside and outside the classroom, such as classroom and homework, falls into this category. Although this category is weighted at 0%, teachers may want to use this category to record students' work so that the process and standards can be tracked for students as well to keep records of the work students have completed and determining if the student is qualified for a retake opportunity. So for bullet point number 3, feedback that I got from teachers, the only reason they have this category is for SPG, schools, POC, groups. Why would a teacher give an assignment and not give kids credit? So this is from their perspective. So I'm going to move on to a majority of teachers got together and they created a lot of for the board, which I provided to the board in a previous board meeting when it was moved to, I was going to discuss it, but then it was moved to the study session. So these are just concerns from the teachers, so
When,
for full
Ms.
transparency.
When you say majority teachers, do you mean of the
They-
2,000 teachers that we
Well,
have?
I'm
or-
not going to say like how many teachers,
Oh,
but a
okay.
lot of teachers
'Cause-
got
okay.
together and they put this together
Okay.
and they wanted me to present this to the board.
Oh, okay.
So
you're,
it may
you're
be.
not saying all the teachers, you're saying
No,
the ones that
I
spoke
was,
to you.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a large majority. So this will be helpful, to see if we can go back to the drawing board where there's misunderstanding or confusion. So this is what teachers are saying. Collectively, many of the educators in DVUSD feel that the SPG system has not been present or implemented in the way that the board's decision to return to traditional grade. Grades in private school always had the ability to show as percentage in either grade book. They had to be for the state to recognize the grade. Parents can easily enter Canvas and see the assignment, their students' work, teacher feedback, and the grade for the standards. Teachers will have some control of their grade books, at the very least, a say in the categories and the weight percentage. Instead, with the standards grade book, the district, not the teacher, controls the categories and weights. So the next one, this poses endless issues. A few examples of these issues are the 80-20 split puts any child with test or performance anxiety at disadvantaged students are children. The children have realized that 80% is worth far more than 20%. For the 0% for practice, however, they have not come to terms that in order to do well on an assessment, the coursework must be completed. Therefore, students are not learning the material. Many classes such as CTE, dual enrollment, AP, etc. have required categories and weights of their own. Teachers can no longer enter these categories and weight, compromising the integrity of the class. No real solution has been offered to many of the teachers other than maybe just do the grade in Canvas. Rio has stated very clearly that they will not participate in any of this nonsense. Several teachers have contacted Rio, and now the progress may be in jeopardy. The next one, students will be held to some accountability for learning. Though the district and the training allows for grade of 0 if conditions are not met, many teachers were verbally told that if there are any zeros in the assessment category, that they will be spoken to and will have to produce a real reason to enter the 0. Limit equitability. No evidence still allows or may force teachers to record 49% for work that was never turned in. And the last one, they stated this grading system violates decades of U.S. Supreme Court precedents, which has guaranteed significant academic freedom protection for teachers. So once again, for full transparency, I presented what the board voted for that May 9th board meeting, and what the teachers provided when they had their training in the beginning of the year. And then the big majority of teachers got together to create this letter, so they wanted me to present this to the board. So from my perspective, looking at this, comparing from the board meeting May 9th and what teachers have in place right now, even being a teacher for 21 years, like I personally am kind of confused, with the categories, with the district taking control of the grading system. As a teacher, I truly believe, you're the teacher of record. So I'm still kind of confused with that. So to me, I feel as a board that represent the parents, the staff, the teachers, to me, from my experience doing grading for 21 years, it does not seem like traditional grading. I know Dr. Galligan wanted me to show me Power School. So it's not I who needs to be convinced because I'm not in the Deer Valley School District classroom. If you can provide that PowerPoint to the parents and the teachers, maybe there will be clarification because it seems that some schools are doing this, some schools are doing that. When I talk to different teachers from different schools, so maybe that's something that we need to come together because even parents are saying the same thing. Well, I have a kid in this school, why are they doing this? I got a kid in another school, why are they doing this? Didn't the board do traditional, didn't we go for traditional grading? And I said, yes, we did. So there's still confusion with this. So I'm hoping that moving forward, throughout the school year that we'll all be on the same page and that Deer Valley will be a unified school district on the same page. If any board members have any questions, again, this is full transparency. This is not about attacking or saying, oh, you did this. We just want a solution for the parents, a solution for the teachers, for the district, so we can come together and see what changes we need to make, to move forward. So that way they're not coming to the board or afraid or in hiding to write a letter or in hiding to meet the board. There's no reason to be in hiding. We're here to collaborate. We're all professionals. So if anyone has any questions, Mrs. Orwin.
I do. I'm interested in the word majority because we do have, I think, 1,900 teachers, so on and so forth, which is, I mean, the majority of teachers I hear, the issue they're having is the 20%. And how does that translate for those that have test anxiety? However, we did ask as a full board to have our association do a survey. Where is it? Oh, you're hiding. We all did get the results of that. Is it appropriate for Mrs. Fisher to speak to her results? Or the results?
Yeah. So Mrs. Fisher did provide the results, and Mrs. Kelly Fisher. Yeah, Mrs. Kelly Fisher. So number one, her survey says, have you received presentation and grading at the beginning of the school year? So 95.7% say yes, our school has seen and discussed the presentation. I did get a lot of feedback from teachers because they were saying, yeah, but are they measuring what the issues are? So I'm just saying what teachers are saying. I'm not criticizing anyone.
My request was to let Mrs. Fisher kind of present.
Okay, Mrs. Fisher, do you want
For
to
people that answered the
explain
survey.
your presentation? Thank you.
Hello. So we put together a survey, and really, when I spoke with Mrs. Paperman, one of the main things we wanted to do was have a comment box so that everyone felt safe to say exactly how they felt, give us any good, bad, or indifferent about how they felt about the new grading. And we had 812 teachers or educators take this survey, and that's kind of unprecedented for some of our surveys for a week and a half being out. But if you look at the results that I sent, you can see that when I asked if they've received the presentation, a majority of the schools have, and later on, a lot of the schools said that that it was scheduled in for one of their upcoming staff meetings, so they were going to have the presentation soon. And then if you look at the next question, you can see that we asked just to say how they felt the grading practices were. and 82% said that they felt that it was traditional grading with proficiency of learning standards identified. And then 15.5% felt like it was something other. And a very small percentage said that it was uh, traditional grading. And then we asked if they had taken part in any of the opportunities that the district provided for training. Um, and I will say that on that one, I did forget to close off the other box. So we got a lot of one person saying something individual, but a majority of the people said that they had taken advantage of some of the training. Well, actually, 32% or 323 people said they had not done any, but they did list in individual things that they had teammates that were helping them or things like that, that they had support on their campus individually. And then the rest of the survey was just 812 responses, ranging from they had nothing to say at this time to they were good with it and they were not sure. Some said they weren't sure if it was different or had questions specific to special education students or things like that. But I will not go through all 812 individual responses at this time, unless you'd like me to read them all.
Thank you, Kelly Fisher, for doing the survey. So,
Do you want Dr. Galligan
Yeah,
to
Dr.
correct
Galligan,
anything?
yes.
I think she has a presentation, or if she, or if you just want to teach like feedback that we're supposed to take somewhere, what kind of direction you want to give
well, the
us?
goal for this was when I spoke to the teachers is I'll present what, to be full transparency, what Dr. Gallagher has, the training that the teachers got, and then their letter of concern. So that way, maybe we can come up with a solution, to move forward. So there's no confusion with the parents and there's no confusion with the teachers. And it would be great if we can present the power school so parents can see it, but what you were trying to explain is traditional grading, and this is what we're doing. And yeah, Dr. Galligan.
President Paperman, members of the board, I can address some of the things that you brought up. I also have information, since you were not able to meet with me over the last few weeks. I did put Power School SNPs into a presentation so that you can see what teachers see and put in, and then what parents see. That way you can see a portion of what I was going to share with you.
Yes.
I know there are other board members who might also have questions, so we can look at that. I can address some of the concerns that you expressed here from the board meeting that
That
we
would
were
be
not able to.
fantastic. If you can present it so community members can see it and then, and then discuss the concerns that, from this PowerPoint. Thank you.
We can certainly do
Yeah,
that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So it should come up pretty quick. If I can just go back to your concern about the 80-20 split. That is a fairly typical split for many of our teachers in past years. And it's not simply a test. If you heard when you were reading it, it could be a summative test, it could be a performance assessment, which would be like in our fine arts or in other areas. It could be a report, a unit or module assessment, quizzes, long-term projects, short-term projects, presentations, capstone projects, research papers, and lab reports. That's all more than just a single test. So there are multiple things that teachers assess over the course of a quarter or a semester. And 80% has been fairly typical over many, many years. But I'll come back to that in just a moment. So I just wanted to share with you when we went and looked for a definition of traditional grading. There is not really a clean definition, but this is the one that I felt best encompassed what the board asked us to do. It's a holistic view of student performance through either a single letter or numerical grade. Assessment scores are graded and recorded. They're averaged, and then they convert into a percentage system. So when we were navigating what is traditional grading, we felt it was just that. What DVUSD grading practices are that the board gave us as well as approved on May 9th is that there would be a single letter grade, A through F, for grades 3 through 12, ES and U for grades 1, 2. There would be a percentage score, 0 to 100%. The course grades would be averaged. There would be zeros input for missing work, and that we would determine proficiency of a standard in the assessment category only, and that would be for information only. It wouldn't impact the percentage of the course grade. So when we look at, and I apologize that this looks so small, this is a high school ELA course. And what you'll see on the far left is a letter grade for each of those students for their course, a percentage grade for that child's course, and all of the things that follow after that are the different assignments that would be coursework or assessment. And you can see that the numbers usually are out of points. Sometimes they're out of percentages. And those scores then tally up and are averaged for a letter grade and a percentage at that time. You'll also notice there is a little orange box about 4 students down. That orange box signifies missing work, and that's one of the icons in PowerSchool. And missing work is to be assigned a 0 at the time that it is due. So you can see for this particular teacher, for that student, she's marked that there are 2 assignments missing, and those assignments have been assigned a 0. If you look at the bottom left corner, you will see in one particular assessment, it's the theme analysis. What the teacher has given is here are the points, and then this is the one standard in that assessment that the teacher determined proficiency toward on that assessment. And so you can see how that looks for a teacher. So a teacher assigns the points or the percentage for each assessment or coursework, and then for assessments will determine proficiency for at least one standard. That standard does not change that grade, but we do use the guidance, grading guidance chart just to support teachers' percentage scores. If you want to see what a parent sees, so this is a parent-student view. At the top, it tells you the semester, it tells you the final letter grade. So for this particular student, the student has a B or an 87%. And that is how PowerSchool represents grades this year for all students, basically 1st through 12th grade. Then if you look below, all of those categories, as you mentioned, coursework and assessment are listed. Then the actual assignment, and as you go across, each assignment has a score, and that score is changed into a percentage, and that percentage is changed into a letter grade. For assessments, if you were to look down just about a little more than half of the way, you'll see there's a little blue box. If a parent wanted to click on that blue box, they certainly could, and it would show that standard. So when I went back up here, that particular standard that was attached to the theme analysis, a parent could click on that and see the standard and how a student was determined for proficiency. So this is, as I said, a high school. This is very typical of 3rd through 12th grade grade books. For a 1st grade, 1st and 2nd grade, what you will see here, if you look toward the left, you'll see that there's an ESNU. That ESNU is given a percentage. Going further across to the right, you'll see that the coursework assessments are listed and marked as collected. If you look below, what you'll see there is for 1st and 2nd grade, they only assess by standard, and that has been true for years. You can see that for Math 1, the 4-3-2, for Math 1, the next one over, you can see that as well. Those determinations by the teacher of proficiency toward that standard then are moved into a percentage grade and then averaged. And then the average gives the overall course grade for that student at that time. So to look at what a parent view is for first and second grade, you can see it looks a little different than third through 12th grade, but what you will see is the actual standards that have been taught. These standards are also represented on the report card. And then you can see the score, and then that score translates into a percentage, and then that percentage is averaged to a final course grade. So that's what parents and students can see on PowerSchool in first grade and second grade, and then before that in third through 12th grade. So I just wanted you to see how the view is for not only our teachers, but also for our parents. Do you have any questions, Mrs. Paperman?
The coursework and assessment, are those assessments just created by the district, or is it by the teacher of record? And also with the coursework, is it just district coursework or teacher of record?
President Paperman, every teacher determines what lessons they're teaching and what assignments they are assigning, and then what will go in the grade book, whether it goes into coursework or whether it goes into assessment. The teachers create all of that themselves. Now, we do have common assessments, and those are usually our benchmark assessments. Some teachers will utilize those in the grade book, and the school or the PLC team has made that determination. Some of them will use that as information. Those would be the only assessments truly that the district is requiring teachers to use. Now, we do work in cohorts to work through common assessments, but mainly our PLC teams create common assessments, common formative assessments based on the standards that they've identified for the next unit of study and the strategies and lessons that they're putting in place. The teachers create all of that, whether it's in their PLC teams or in their classrooms themselves.
Okay. Any community members have any questions on the grading system? Any, oh, you do? Okay. Please state your first and last name for the record. Thank you.
My name is Jackie McCormick. I teach 7th grade math at Park. Mr. Chapman and myself are just back there watching the presentation. Our question is this: we belong to a similar MSCT PLC team, and we're confused because of the slides with the points on there. We are not allowed to put points on ours. We have to put the percentages on ours. So that's my question.
Mrs. Dr. Galligan?
Do you want to address that? Sure.
Okay. President Paperman and guests and the board, the teachers have the option, 4 different options when they're setting up the assignment grade entry. They can choose to put in points, percentage, letter grade, or collected only. As a team, we recommend the percentage method because that can be utilized better with rubrics that teachers have already created and they want to continue using. They've done that work. But points are available. You saw that example earlier. With the assessment category, we do ask that they tag a standard and score it. So we would definitely want those to align. In a lot of cases, the percentage method is easier to line those together.
Okay.
I don't know, you asked the question, I just want to make sure it's cleared up, because if you have the question, I'm sure someone else has it.
My question is, and not to be the devil's advocate because I was on that grading team, is that when we're putting points in things, we're using the program, the computer calculates those points based on a percentage. And that has nothing to do with that proficiency chart. So Mr. Chapman and I are both very confused.
Yeah, Ms. McCormick, you are correct. The percentage method is the preferred method, but the team did not, when they presented this to the board and to others, they did not prescribe one of the methods.
President Paperman, if I
Mr. Carver, yeah.
just to clarify for me, Dr. Galligan, when you showed me how Power Schools worked, I think I'm thinking the same thing that Ms. McCormick was just referring to, in that they can either enter the percentage, so 17 out of 20 is 85%. They could also enter 17 out of 20 as in points, which would compute the 85%. And if it's an assessment, they need to tie one assessment to it, and whatever 85% looks like, which is a 3, according to the documentation that we have, that's the way that it would look all the way through. 17 out of 20, 85%, and a 3. Is that correct?
President Paperman, Mr. Carver, in most cases, that would be correct. We would want to go the other direction. We would want to determine student proficiency on the teacher-taught standard, identify what that is, and then determine whether you're using percentages or points. As Kathy said, we would prefer percentages, where that would fall on that assessment. And then that percentage changes to a letter grade, A through F.
Any other board member?
What do you mean by, I guess, I just want to make sure that they're understanding. When you say you prefer a percent versus a point, I guess one, why is there a choice? And then number two, why isn't it just, why is it all not the same straight across?
Well, President Paperman and Ms. Simichek, when the team worked in those short 6 weeks, we did not get to the point of prescribing how those score entries would be entered. And so as a district level and setting this up, we did not want to infer something that wasn't approved by the board or that team.
Also, I just want to talk about standards for a second because I've gotten some emails where teachers talk and parents are talking about standards, and I'm still saying standards. We're not supposed to be doing standard-based grading, but standards have been around. I mean, they're what curriculum should be based off. They're the Arizona state standards, what we should be achieving for our students or wanting our students to achieve, I should say. And even when I was teaching first grade, I always had to attach a standard to the grade I was giving the student, or I should say the assignment that I created or was teaching always had a standard attached to it so the parent could see, okay, they did this lesson. Well, why did they do this lesson? Well, they did this lesson because it attaches to this standard, and this is what we taught them. So I don't know what happened in the last few years, but I'm starting to get confused because I always remember standard. And so when I hear, why are we so focused on standards? It's really just a general question. Haven't we always been? I don't know. Or shouldn't we have always been?
President Paperman, Ms. Simichek, first and second grade, that's how they grade, and that's on the report card. That's how it's always been.
But it wasn't like that was it not like that for 3rd through 12th? Yeah, I did teach first, so yeah, I guess that's what I'm going off of.
No.
No, okay.
For 3rd through 6th grade, we added standards to the report cards. I believe it was about 2013.
Okay.
But they had no impact on a grade.
But it's been some time.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Mrs. Orwin?
Dr. Galligan, but we've always had standards. We just didn't specify that this is what your grade is on. I mean, we've always been with the standards that were expected for the kids to learn.
President Paperman, Ms. Ordway, the state has provided us with standards. Those standards have changed over the years, but they provided us with standards. There is a difference, though, in teaching to the standards and understanding your standards so that when you are crafting a lesson and an assessment, that it actually targets whatever standards you have taught, rather than taking, going from page 1 in the book, whether it's math or social studies or ELA, and just working your way through, and then just doing either the quizzes or the summative assessments at the end of a unit without really paying attention to what are the standards. So this has really been a ongoing way of really being better able to meet the state requirements for teaching the standards and assessing the standards. Again, only first and second grade are actually grading the standards. Third through 12th grade identify proficiency toward the standards, and then that gives them the opportunity, more so, to identify what is the appropriate grade. There's just two ways of thinking about this. How do we assess proficiency on the standard, or are we taking an assessment from a textbook or something else and just looking at the errors on that test?
And I have part two. With respect to CTE, and these are one question with three parts, CTE, our dual enrollment, and our AP, could you explain how that's working?
I will start and then probably turn it over to Kathy, but there are not required categories for career and technical education courses. Now, they are performance-based courses. They really look at the hands-on learning of kids. Dual enrollment in AP, we work closely with Rio. In fact, last year, we worked with them throughout the year, up through the end of the year. And into this year, we are 6 weeks in, and Rio has not contacted us to say anything about that they will not honor grades that teachers are giving, and they have never indicated that our program with them is in jeopardy. And I'm going to ask Kathy just to continue on dual enrollment in AP.
Yeah, part of our gradebook setup for our dual enrollment and our AP courses included loading the competencies for dual enrollment courses, as well as the AP, they call them big ideas. So those have now been loaded in for the teachers. The feedback I've gotten is they're very appreciative of that, because now they can track that and track that with their corresponding organizations. So as of this moment, I have not heard any problems or issues that any dual enrollment or AP teacher has been having. In fact, I've heard the opposite. They appreciate having those standards in there so that they can track those.
So would it be possible for you to perhaps reach out to the dual enrollment teachers and let them know if they have any issues? You'd be more than happy to let them know how to work it out. And the same thing with AP, and perhaps maybe, I don't know, Dr. Finch, however you want to do this, but since we talked about problems, we don't, and there are none, or few, perhaps a letter correspondence to parents whose children are in any of the three of those programs to reassure them that this is how it's working would be awesome.
Mrs. Fisher, you have a question?
Well, I actually have a couple and some concerns. So just briefly looking at the teacher survey, the association survey, and I do appreciate the association for doing it, but it was focused on training. And when I go through and I look at the answered questions, over 82% of the teachers have not been trained or said they had not been trained. Over 82%, that is significant when you look district-wide. That's only a sample of 800. But that was their response. It was not my response. I didn't create it. It was their response. So
The
that's
training's
concerning.
available, but they haven't taken advantage of it, is what you're saying.
They've not been
Because it's all
trained.
it's web-based.
Yeah, they've not been trained. They have not taken a training. So 82% answered, no, I have not participated in a training. and then when we start talking about these dual enrollment courses, I know some other board members as well have met with teachers, because teachers have asked to meet. I know that I've met with teachers on multiple days, multiple teachers, and in each group that I met with, they had listings of teachers that were too fearful to come forward. And a lot of them were APs. So, I mean, we can try and tell Ms. Paperman that her many is few, and we can try and say everything is terrific. Let's send a letter out. But our teachers are not stating that. They're either staying silent, from what some of them told me. Some of them are not staying silent, and their administrators are saying,
They just had a survey that they've responded to.
please don't be the ones that speaks up.
That was a DVA survey. They can say whatever they want in there.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We know DVA can't say whatever they want because they'll
That
face
survey's collected by them. I don't know, Ms. Fisher, you want to comment on that?
a corrective action.
Ms.
We know
Kelly
that.
Fisher can fix that for you.
Hello. So we did do this survey a little bit differently than we normally do. Normally we create it through our Google, our DVUSD Google, and then it automatically collects emails so we know who answered what. And generally when we send the information off to you, we cut the email off so it's just the data. This time we did it through our DVEA Google and did not collect any information, so it was all completely anonymous. So we have no idea who answered what.
Right. Well, that's not in question, though. None of the questions that were asked had anything to do with the concerns. It had to do with whether or not they were trained. And it asked about whether they had heard, because that was what the teachers brought to me, was that, well, I mean, they appreciated those questions because they could answer them. But if you go even reading through the comments, they do, some of them express concern. And it's in pages and pages of comments, which I guess we could compile them and read them, but that would really take a very, very, very. But to say that the teachers are content and there's no problems and there's no impact to AP and there's no impact to dual enrollment is just disingenuous.
President Paperman,
Because
Ms.
the
Fisher.
teachers
That's
are
not
telling
true.
us it is.
I don't believe we're saying that that the majority or even the minority are content. We are just sharing that this is our DVUSD grading practices, and we are working with our teachers and our administrators and the Power School system.
Right.
I don't think we've said anything about content. We have
Right,
also
but
worked
this
to
is
do what the
not.
board has asked, to have a more consistent grading system for our teachers across the system.
I will give you that. The board did vote to go to traditional grading, and then they did retract that. The board did take that back and allow standards-based grading to re-enter. So I can't fault you on doing what the board allowed to be done, but the teachers did not understand that. The teachers were clear that we had voted for standards-based grading to be ended, for traditional grading to be returned, and
95% of the teachers
And-
said it was traditional grading with standards recognized in that survey. That's just the data. That's what that data says.
That's question number 2. It
That was
says
question number
the
2.
That's not
DVUSD
what
grading
teachers are saying.
practices are, and then it says, if you add up, it says 82%, and then there's no percentage for the blue, but traditional grading with proficiency of learning standards identified.
so it's with them in there, so they're still in there.
But we need to
And
identify
there's-
our
and-
standards.
Right.
Teachers are stating that it is a problem, that they are not. They're being overwhelmed with the work of the standards-based grading. They're being fearful for their students, especially the students who are going to go from zeros to suddenly having 49% or whatever the new percentage is that they will be forced to enter. Comments that we've received have also been things like, well, what's the point? You don't really need a teacher because the district already says they're going to dictate what goes down. Just put in recordings and eliminate us. You know, and I know that was a sarcastic, I'm really upset at this moment comment. But the fact that a teacher felt that way to say it was real. And, you know, they've asked me to look at more data, and I am, but I guess the point is moot because this was shoved into a study session, and the public knows we can't vote on anything in a study session. And even if we do get it up there, it's predetermined by 3 anyway. But I want to make it clear that our teachers are not happy. We're losing teachers.
I don't think you have no data to support that.
Well,
Actually, the
will as they
opposite is
leave.
true. More people are coming to Deer Valley than ever. We are the most staffed we've been in 3 years.
You get new and then they leave. Our
Our data
long-term,
doesn't say that.
well,
I don't know what data you're looking
Finch,
at.
go ahead, look at the camera and let the teachers that are concerned know that you don't care if they want to leave.
I don't care
Feel
if you
free to
leave.
tell them
I
that.
don't have a problem with that.
Feel free to tell them because I do care. Because some of the ones that are talking about it are really good teachers. They're very
Dr.
good
Galligan has
teachers.
said that we're continuously improve at district. We're always trying to do better. We're not denying that.
So do you think it's going to do better if we eliminate or disregard and get rid of our teachers who are excellent and have been doing a great job?
Our data
Who
doesn't
right
say
now
that.
feel very disrespected?
Our data doesn't say that. We have actually the opposite data.
Well, I'm sorry for you teachers that have met with me for the last couple of weekends and have corresponded with me. According to the superintendent, the data doesn't show that you're real. So I apologize. I'm done.
President Paperman?
Mr. Carver?
So a couple of things. Everybody that's listening tonight and that is here has heard from the administration exactly what it is that we're supposed to be dealing with when it comes to the grading practices. So what I have heard the administration share with us is not, to Mrs. Fisher's point, is not what some of the educators that have reached out to me have said that they're being told. And we're going to encounter those kind of things when you're trying to change a process or implement a process. But what I'd like to say, since we're talking to everybody that's watching remotely, is just that you've heard it from the source tonight, what's expected, the way that it can be done, the way they'd like to see it done. And when we all agreed on this back in May, of course, it passed 4-1. I just want to point out that we all agreed at the time that the way that the previous board tried to manage getting rid of SBG, they just simply made a vote and then walked away without a roadmap, and then everybody was upset at the way that it happened. So when we had this vote in May, I did ask for a roadmap so that we could all be on the same page. We adopted that roadmap in May. Caveat to that is I had actually asked for several meetings to happen before May so that we could make sure all of this back and forth out of the way and be on the same page before it was launched, but that didn't happen. So we took the program that was offered, and during conversation on that day in May, it was agreed by everybody in the room that you can't just flip a switch. There are people, there are educators in our district that are completely comfortable with standards-based grading and are uncomfortable with traditional grading. So this gave them a means by which they could generate a traditional grade using the process that they're familiar with, so that in my mind, when we approved it, it's a stepping stone. It also did require them to have to tie a standard, if you will, to assessments so that we can all see what it is that's being taught for informational purposes only. So you can enter a grade, you can enter the 85% and then go backwards and enter the standard grade that goes with that 85%, which is a 3. If you're a standards-based teacher, you can enter 15 standards for that assignment and then let all the standard grades roll up to the percentage that it's supposed to be. Is that what I wanted in my mind? No, I'm like the rest of you that are frustrated about that. I wanted to straight percentages, but also in my mind, we didn't do our due diligence as a board and have multiple meetings before the process needed to be executed. So in all fairness, we voted on what we voted on in May so that everybody knew about it. I'll share a little bit of frustration just real quick that everybody knew in May what it was that we were going to do. August gets here and everybody acts indignant when it gets rolled out. I'm sorry to be like that, but that's kind of the way that I feel. We had all summer that we could have addressed issues, but everybody checked out, came back in August. And now there's folks that are upset. I don't want to use the words like everybody or majority because that's not true. For as much as I appreciate DVEA's survey that they did, the fact of the matter is we had less than 50% of our educators respond. And we had 40% of those that respond said that they didn't even bother to take the training yet. So I can't, as a board member, sit here and pound my chest and beat on the desk and yell at the administration about a flawed process when people haven't even bothered to take the time to see what it's all about. I know that's going to upset some of you, but the fact of the matter is, for those of you that know me, I'm a processes, policy, and fact-based thinker when it comes to making decisions. So if you want us to have all the information that we need when it comes to making these decisions, you need to get engaged. I understand that there's people concerned about repercussions, but again, I will go back to the fact that everybody heard here tonight the process that is expected, that you can enter percentages as long as you tie a standard to it, and I understand that can be cumbersome, but you can do the percentages, you can do the points, you can do everything that it is that you wanted to do if you're a traditional teacher. The standards element in my mind was to help those that wanted to push back on going back to standards, an option, or not an option, but a pathway to get there. This was simply one step in several in my mind of getting us to where the community needed us to be. And again, we can't always have everything that it is that we're looking for wrapped up in a nice, neat bow. We need to think about unintended consequences and things that are going to happen. I would encourage the board, for as frustrating as it is, to have a few more meetings when it comes to the meat and potatoes of things. And I know that there's a lot of opinion up here about things that are getting pushed off, but in this particular case, I feel that we did the community a disservice by voting on this initially in February and then pushing it off till May to come up with a plan. So I think we need to do a little bit better planning into the future so that we can avoid these issues in retrospect, because to Mrs. Fisher's point, if this was an action item, what would we be voting on and now that we're into the school year? Because that would look like a bloody train wreck as well. So we need to give a little bit of thought and sincere ponderance to the things that we're doing and try to plan things out a little bit better so that we don't have egg on our face and confusion after the fact. If we're truly here to get things done, let's put a little bit more effort into doing it the right way. That's just my 2 cents on this thing.
Thank you. Mr. Carver?
I just have one really short comment. Traditional grading, percentage, it's called math. It's just math. And it's been around for, 80 years. So it's not a new concept that suddenly would have hit anyone. Anyone who graduated high school and is now a teacher should know math.
Another piece of the puzzle we haven't mentioned yet, really the tail that's wagging the dog is the state assessment, which is based off of standards. So if you want to do well on the state assessment, you need to know the state standards. They are telling us this is what we're going to look for and this is what we're going to assess. So that's the birth of where that came from, kind of back to your point.
Thank you.
President,
So I just, yes, Dr.
Thank you, President Paperman. Just as a point of clarification, may I ask again, where did you see the percentage for the number of folks or the percentage of folks that did not receive the training?
It's a long list of comments. You have to count the notes.
I believe Ms. Fisher,
It is,
Ellie Fisher pointed out it was 330 some odd.
she said
So-
800. 660 no's, which mathematically, if it's 800, 660 no's, comes out to 82.5, I believe.
So, because I'm looking at the first question, which says they have seen the presentation on the grading and it's 96%.
Right, but then there's a question about, did you take advantage of training?
So they saw the first one is, have you had the first training? And maybe a better question would be, did you take advantage of the additional training that's available? Maybe that's a better way a question should have been.
Okay.
I stopped counting at 660.
Right. So those are, opportunities are there. Yeah.
President Paperman, Ms. Fisher, the initial training is the training that we gave our administrators, and I'll just show you right here. That training was pretty broad with our new administrators, then all administrators, and then we also have done training with them twice in August. So our campus administrators received training, and the expectation was that they would train their teachers either in pre-service or by the end of August. Those were the trainings. So the question that was asked in the DVA survey was, have you received the initial training? And 95.5% said yes. The other training is optional. Teachers choose to go to those trainings if they want. And if you take a look here, you'll see that we've had trainings throughout the summer. We did the PLC Summit with training on May, Tech Fest in July, the pre-service days. We did have schools reach out to us to have us come train, or they train themselves. We've offered open Zoom labs all through the month of August. Those are optional, the Zoom labs, not required. There have been staff presentations, full staff presentation at one school that they requested it. 7 teacher teams have been provided individual one-on-one assistance. 11 individual teachers reached out, and they've been provided with one-on-one assistance. And then we've reached out to so many teachers who have emailed us just for clarification. And then when we look at some of the training challenges, we just know that we had new administrators, we have new teachers. All schools made adjustments in grading this year so we could norm toward consistency across our system. And that consistency was the 3 categories. That consistency was every child would receive a percentage and a letter grade, irregardless of what you did before. So those are just some of the training challenges that we would identify and acknowledge. When you talk about parents, our parents have received information from us as well. And I can say that our parents have gone onto our district website to look at DVUSD grading practices, and when they are noting that something is not quite right in their child's classroom, they're reaching out to the teacher, the principal, or even here up in curriculum. So there's lots of information, including parent letters that have gone out. We have a very initial parent video, a new parent video going out as well, and then any email responses that both our schools and us up in the departments would take care of. That little snip up there is from our district website, and it's very clear to our parents. So those that have questions can always reach out to their school or up here as well. When we talk about, you've asked about Power School, we will acknowledge that the Canvas sync is not as easy as it should be, and that's been true since Canvas became our learning management system 8 years ago. This is nothing new for our syncing between Canvas and Power School. However, Power School is our student information system, and Power School is where parents go for a multitude of information about their child, of which grades, attendance, all of those types of things are in there. So we know that there are some resource challenges, and as a continuous improvement district, we continue to work through those. I would encourage and ask any educator, whether it's a teacher or an administrator, if they have a concern, reach out to me, and I would be happy to talk with them. They can talk with Kathy as well. There is no censorship or no concern that I would have, because we are all in a learning environment. Whether you're comfortable with this, you're not comfortable with this, we are all learning. The only other thing that I would add, just as you say, for complete transparency, we do know that there's some challenges with the grading guidance chart. The grading practices work team really put that in place to help teachers be better able to translate rubric scores into a percentage and letter grade. And we know that some of our first and second grade teachers are struggling a bit with the ESNU and that being averaged for a grade. So the scale percentages there have been probably where we've seen most concerns brought to us. We also know that in categories, some of the teachers, even though we provided training to administrators and training directly to our teachers in the pre-service, they may not have inactivated previous categories, and so there can be some confusion with that. And that's just following up with our administrators and our teachers to help them with that. And then we also know that our specialist teachers have both an A through F system at grades 3 through 8 and an ESNU for grades 1 and 2, but that has been fairly typical for specialist teachers in K-8 schools. I can go in further about Power School technical challenges. Power School is not necessarily a poor system, but it is a complex system. So we know that there's Power School settings that really have to be identified, and we've put that in many different trainings and PowerPoints and videos. Our Power School support, we are very thankful that we now have an IS&T Power School System Administrator that we've not had for 2 years. And so that has caused challenges as well, but we're able to start rectifying that. We also know that our direct Power School support to one of their people was removed from Deer Valley when the board dropped standards-based grading. So now we use just the typical vendor system of tickets when we have problems, and it takes a bit longer to get those problems taken care of. We've also heard, as you have, that the Power School Parent Portal, which is an app, is good, but it doesn't give all of the assignment information. So we have always, always, always encouraged our parents to go to the web-based parent portal, which is just the preferred method. As I mentioned, Canvas is not seamless, integrating with, syncing with Power School, but that is true for the past 8 years. And then just also in complete transparency, the report cards that we use in Deer Valley are challenging to update. It's all with coding, and this also has been true for over 11 years. So every year that we make changes, that is a challenge because each individual report card and each section in each report card has to be manually changed. It's not something that can just whoosh and be done. So our current report cards are challenging on the back side. What the parents see is pretty clear, but it's the back end. So I just wanted you to know that we are doing our best to be very transparent with our staff, our teachers, and our administrators, and you, the board. I also just wanted to share that what we are also working on, again, is updating our report cards because they're changing from last year. That's a new legend. We are creating instructional slides for teachers so that they better understand the Power School reports that they can pull about their class and about their instruction and their assignments, providing our administrators with look-fors in October and December for what they look for in a grade book. Sometimes our administrators are not as comfortable in Power School because they don't use it daily like our teachers do. So giving them those look-fors is coming. There are additional parent videos that will be created in addition to the ones we currently have. And as you know, our PRAG and GRAG, our promotion, retention, and assessment grading, and our graduation and grading teams will begin work for the 24-25 school year in the upcoming months. And then, as always, we provide support for teachers, administrators, teacher teams, and schools if they reach out to us. We can't help and we can't fix if we don't know. And as you can see in the emails, we've had plenty of individuals reach out to us for training and clarification. So just some things I wanted to be very transparent, that we're working through some of those challenges, and we are aware of quite a few of them. If there are others, we absolutely seek knowledge so that we can work through them.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gallagher, for the transparency. And I think that's what teachers like Ms. Shimashek, said, like, I work with standards, this is how I did my report card, this is how, I did the same thing too. It was not confusing to me, but now I guess it sounds like the grading system has changed. There's some hiccups, with the transparency that needs to be fixed. Like the teacher, that spoke up, well, I'm confused with this, or, so we have, many of those teachers that may be within the school site, provide that clarification, like she got to explain to her, and probably she understood. So maybe that's what the sites need clarification, of what's confused. What do we need to do to help you understand with the grading system? So if we can move forward, for the rest of the year to provide that. And thank you for, for the transparency that the challenges, that need to be fixed because it's also causing confusion. Thank you. So we're going to move on to item,
I do think we should just be clear.
oh, wait.
To the
yeah.
teachers, though, that, we do have parents that want to comment. As we end it, the teachers who have reached out to us, who have asked us to bring this forward, they need to understand that there will be no action. Nothing will be done to help you in your situation beyond you reaching out to follow the path that you've been set upon.
We'll give you all the training you need.
So if you wish to continue, I understand is it accurate? We have 75% new administration. Is that accurate? It's the number of percent?
Not true.
No? Okay. Well, it was somebody sent me a
We have
quote.
4.
They said Dr. Finch said that there was 75% new admin, so I'm just asking if that. Because I know we have
We have
definitely
4 new ones.
turned
4 new
over. Oh,
principals.
we've had more than 4. I've
Just,
sat in more.
we have 4
more
that are
hiring
not
than
from our
4.
district. Everybody else is an inside kid,
So there's still new admin, but.
right?
okay.
But they're Deer Valley trained.
I'm not going to argue with you. That's that's not appropriate. We've already had complaints about you arguing with the board.
So we have
It's not
a,
appropriate, so let's stop.
Just correcting the facts.
we have
No,
a,
you're not.
we have a
members.
community member. You have a question. State your first and last name for the record.
It won't record.
Hello? Much better. Joshua Hawkins. Coming back to the presentation that we just had, you mentioned that the second training was optional for the teachers for the new grading. Is that correct?
We've offered multiple training opportunities, of which Zoom Open Labs
No,
were
I understand,
one.
but it was optional. Any reason it wasn't required? Because
was-
if we're changing the grading, wouldn't we want the teachers to be fully knowledgeable on how to do this so there's no confusion and they ask questions and get frustrated?
I would agree, sir. That's why we have done training with our administrators over,
Yes, the specific question was why was it not required?
oh, the pre-service training was pretty extensive. And then our administrators follow up with that pre-service training. So
How long is that secondary training that's optional?
I think just to clarify, the pre-service training was required for all teachers to have on their campuses. It was, then we followed up with additional training opportunities. If they still had questions or they still had confusion, they could participate in any of those as well. But the pre-service was required.
So just to clarify, the first pre-certification one that you're referring to covered everything that the teacher needed to know about this new grading scale, correct?
Yes, it went through all the setup steps, it went through the grade scales, it went through the calculation methods, it went through some of the procedural kind of pieces about late work and missing work and those kinds of steps. There was one additional step that needed to be done by first and second grade teachers, and that went out on the first week of school, and we got that to all of those teachers. It was just a few steps they had to do, but
that one
other
was
than that,
recent.
it was all in there. Yeah.
Okay. And also a secondary follow-up question in the same line, but not along the training for the teachers. Is it standard across the district that they only are required to enter the grades once a week? Because my school has trouble doing that every 2 weeks.
the standard is one meaningful grade per week, and that is a minimum. If you saw some of the two screenshots that I shared, there are multiple coursework and assessment for multiple teachers. But the minimum is that there is one meaningful grade per week per subject.
Is there a definition of a meaningful?
There is a meaningful grade.
Because I would assume that all of my assessments are meaningful. If we're giving a complete grade of a student, all of it would be meaningful, correct?
That would be true. Not every week will a meaningful grade impact the grade book, the course grade. But what it does is it provides information and gives both student and parent a greater idea of what they might still need to do. However, for every course content, every second week, there must be a meaningful grade that impacts the final grade. So that would be different, I would say, for a teacher who only teaches a group of kids once a week, like our elementary art teachers. Then they would put it in once every 3 weeks. Or our PE teachers who teach twice a week, they would put in a meaningful grade every other week. But for teachers who teach a group of kids 4 to 5 days a week, that's a meaningful grade each week.
So is there one standard for all staff that it's once a week, or is it just for those teachers that see them once or twice a week? Because I would assume a teacher that sees them every day for math, science, history, calculus, biology, whatever they're doing, they would be entering those grades daily as they got them versus once a week on a Saturday when I feel lazy, I could put these grades in, or maybe on a Sunday night just before school starts, because that's how my kids get entered. I'm just saying this is my personal experience, so I don't know what another kid gets, but I don't know how to keep up with my kids' grades when I don't know daily where they've failed and where they've succeeded. Versus once a week, I'm going to have a conversation on a weekend where they're not supposed to think about school. So why
Right.
can't we have it more often, like biweekly, for those that educate them throughout the day, not once a week?
Well, I would think for any teacher, so I was a teacher for 16 years, when I would have either an assessment or a coursework score, it would go in as soon as I graded it. I would do my very best to get those grades in within 24, 48 hours, just depending on the number of kids and the type of assessment assignment. So for many of our teachers, they will get grades in as quickly as they can. For long writing projects, essays, that will take a teacher who may have 30, 50, 180 kids a bit longer to get those grades in.
Understood. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item B, Human Resources Termination Process. Mrs. Fisher.
Okay, I brought this forward mostly because I don't know if we need to change policy. I did ask Ms. Taylor to print out some of our policies for me. And so I don't know if the board even wants to, I'm assuming the board won't want to look at any of it, but if they do, I had her pull the staff ethics, conduct with students, and staff conduct, because I was looking for something specific. We talk about how we terminate employees. There's been a lot of talk about, well, classified versus certified. Certified, we have to give due process. Classified, we're told, well, we have to give them due process, except for when we don't want to. Then we don't ask questions and we don't do due process. We had that come last year, and we're told, nope, we're not to ask questions. You just go with what administration says. And so I'm concerned when the you know the ones we've had in recent time, there was a lot of information about the one teacher that was known for years by the schools, by the teachers, by the superintendent, that there were extremely close relations with that individual on groups, on social media, on whatever, with students. And it went unaddressed for years until one of the gals finally said, done. And it was like, okay, this one's buddy, this one's this. And that was a fiasco. So in that situation, what can we put in policy that we start actually addressing this? And I hadn't thought about it. We did the past board did their little investigation, which wasn't really an investigation, but did whatever they did and made a few changes in policy to tighten things up. But then we've had individuals this year that have brought stuff forward, and it isn't even so much the last board meeting we had a parent say we weren't told the true title. I have less problem with them not knowing the true title. But one of the individuals that has come also sent me their public records request. This is what I got. And I looked at it and I thought, holy snot. Is there nothing in our policies that could have stopped this? I know, and I'm going to say it right here because it's already been, put out multiple times. I'm not talking about Deer Valley High School, but I know that my son, in multiple situations, was bruised, came home after having been hit, came home after having situations. Surprisingly, the video didn't work, or this or that. But when you have an employee who has the video was working and they actually faced a consequence for abusing a child, why would we ever put them in another position? Why wouldn't we immediately fire them? To me, it's a no-brainer. You hit a child inappropriately, not defending yourself, not accidentally. I understand our teachers, that sometimes they have to do a CIT hold or what have you, because they have a special needs child who may be violent or something. I understand protecting themselves. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about someone who hits or abuses or grabs a child. Why would we ever transfer them to another position? Is there something we need to adjust in these policies? Do we need to add, if they hit a kid, they get fired? I mean, do we need to change that dialogue? Because that is what keeps coming to our board meetings, is those types of situations. We can't terminate on somebody is somebody's friend or hiking buddy or what have you. We need to have something in our policy. And I went through and I thought, okay, well, surely there's something in these, and there's not. There's not. There's not a, when you look at the ethics, it's things like, we won't overthrow the government. Okay, that's cool. You know, we're going to support the principles of due process and the individual rights. That's cool. You know, makes the well-being of students fundamental value of all decision-making and actions. Well, I'm sorry, but that's not occurring if somebody is actually hitting a child or grabbing a child or in some way bruising or damaging a child's body and it's not being terminated. None of these policies speak to that whatsoever. So is that anywhere in any of our policies?
President Paper and Ms. Fisher, I'm going to address some of the things that you mentioned because I think they'll answer the question that you're asking. So you opened first with the confusion regarding due process, so I want to clear that up. And I do have some slides that we can reference if we need to later. There is no difference in due process between a certified staff member or classified. There is difference as far as the negotiated process requires, or even in policy. So GCQF is the policy that governs certified discipline and dismissal. That's not one that you just referenced. What you just referenced was, what I heard you speak to is GBEA, makes the well-being of students the fundamental decision of their daily decisions. That's one of them. Those policies govern how we are to act, but the GCQF policy governs and directly aligns with statute on how we are to discipline staff and terminate certified staff. For classified staff, their due process looks different because they're hourly employees, and so the statute that governs them looks different than it does for certified staff, and so they do receive due process. We make sure that all of our employees receive due process, if not, because as you know, an hourly employee is also an at-will employee, and an at-will status person can be dismissed even sometimes without cause. However, we don't practice that because we also know that we need to show that our practice was not discriminatory and it was for a legitimate business purpose. So we ensure that each person does receive that due process. It
So
might be.
I think it's more the question that I'm asking, isn't, because I understand I understand, but it's disparate in our process. You know, I'm just going over the two classified staff that we've terminated in the last few years. One did not have any infractions in the sense of abusing a child or anything like that, and was terminated with little to no due process. And then the next one was allowed to resign when arrested in a sting to have relations with an underage boy.
So due process,
So-
but I think what to is the overall investigatory process,
No,
including
I'm-
how we're notified of a situation, but our due process is standard. And remember, due process just means the opportunity for the employee themselves to have, to tell their side of the story. Different than that is the investigation processes and everything that we're required to do. But I do want to jump back to your opening statement because I did wonder if when you were referencing confusion, I do recall maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there was confusion around the dismissal of a classified staff member, and the board, I was watching from afar on that day. It was when I was on vacation, so I was watching from vacation. So I couldn't answer the questions that the board had questions about that evening. And the confusion was that the process that we were in was a classified process, and the board believed that we needed to be engaging in the certified process. And so maybe that's the confusion that you're referencing, but they are, those two policies I provided in updates, those are very distinct processes. They're not like one another. So the employee's experience is going to look different and the board's experience is going to look different.
Well, no, yes and no.
Okay.
Because that is part of what causes, so that employee was not afforded that type of due process because he was a classified. Cool, we're good, we're there, we all got it.
Okay.
We're not gonna provide that type of due process, they're different, they're classified.
Well, that type of hearing is
Future
different than
forward,
due process.
future forward, we have an employee who has a situation that, in my opinion, should have been a terminating offense, as in he abused a child on one of our buses and was not terminated. He was transferred, later given the ability to resign in lieu of. Why? What do we need to change in policy to make it clear that if you abuse a child, you may not work for us? That's what I want. That's my ultimate goal, is I want to make it clear, because it seems to not be, that if you abuse a child, you may not work for us.
Yeah, the magic word there is if.
I'm sorry?
The magic word there is if. So that's where you have the investigation process.
I would agree with your
Investigative
answer, and Ms. Fisher, I would agree with you as well. That is not something that is not an occurrence we want in our system, and that is not something that would be tolerated in our system, and the policies that you reference, it would be an obvious violation of those policies. And then we have a range of consequence depending on all the circumstances that lead up to that event. The entire investigation and a decision has to be made. The specific situation that you are referencing, I can't speak to in such a setting, but I can generally say that a public records request would provide limited information and would not provide the entire investigation surrounding that outcome that would be received in any if anyone asked of anyone to receive, anyone's discipline file, you would be receiving the outcome statements and not the total investigation. So there would be assumptions that would be being made on that specific case. But to go to your question and your desire regarding whether or not our employees would be held to a standard and if we would keep them on board if there was proven
Pushing,
violation
hitting.
of statute or abuse, then those policies that you referenced would clearly draw the line.
Could you show me where? I don't see anywhere that it says whether it's hitting, pushing, what level of abuse is accepted. Because what I read, in my opinion, would be unacceptable in any situation, whether it's the end result or not. And I know that what I experienced with my own son, the individual who tore the flesh on his arm, or the one that punched him in the chest, if we could identify, well, one we did identify, but the other one, if we could have, would there have been a consequence? And my concern is there wouldn't have been, especially when I read this, what occurred, and then I read this here, and I don't see that it's a definite. If you strike a child, if you push a child down in a violent manner, that it is a terminating offense.
What you're doing right now when you're explaining this is you're providing circumstances around that. You first stated push a student down. There could be many situations that would cause an employee to push a student down, and that's what the investigation is for. Sometimes someone may believe that you cannot touch students. You cannot put your hands on students. You cannot move students from one location to another, and that would be inaccurate. And I see you shaking your head, so you know that, right? But I'm explaining
I've had to take my son
generally.
down in a hold.
Well, yeah, I'm not even
I
referencing
understand
that. I'm talking about perhaps a custodian that is in the lunchroom, and we have unruly students, and the custodian takes their hands and assists and might move the student over. And sometimes we do investigate situations like that because concern. And then we determine whether or not it was appropriate, if it was necessary for safety purposes, if it was all the circumstances leading up to it, or if the action, as you mentioned, was done out of aggravation, or it was completely inappropriate. All of these things have to be identified through that investigation, and then the employee receives due process so they can provide their side of the story. And then we use all of that together against those policies and against its statute. And there's another one that I don't think you referenced. It's called staff interaction with students. And there's a follow-up. What's the second part of that? What's that one called?
GBEBB.
No, that's not it. It's staff interactions with students and professional boundaries. That is a more explicit document, Ms. Fisher, that outlines the employee shall and the employee shall not. It's more of a black and white document.
Okay, well, I think then that's the one that I would to have the board discuss. Because my concern with what I have seen over the years, and specifically provided recently, the district acknowledged that actions were inappropriate and did not terminate the employee. So,
We could put that in a Friday update.
in my opinion, I don't know that a Friday updates are not public record, and it's the public that's asking. And they're concerned.
I think that policy is
Obviously,
available.
we can't
I'm sure
obviously
we
go
could post that and make
specific
that
individuals.
available to everyone if that's your desire. I know that you all have seen it. We presented it to you a couple of times. It was actually developed as a result of the investigation that you referenced. We made sure that we put that documentation to support additionally for our staff to be very clear of what they can and can't do when it comes to students.
That actually makes it worse. Because honestly, if we knew it was so bad that we needed to put that in, why didn't we just terminate him at that point?
Different, this was
Maybe that's a different one.
Yeah, this was years ago that we put it in place to be more explicit. It had a committee, if you recall, a committee worked on it, and an attorney reviewed it. We brought it in front of the governing board, and we've been using it since.
I think we're talking about two opposite.
Okay.
I think you're talking about the friend of everybody's friend. But that's a different one.
Okay.
I don't know, I guess if the other board members have a concern or not have a concern, it might be just my concern. Maybe the other board members are fine with how our policies are. I don't know.
Well, we can include them in the Friday update, and you can look at them and get back to us if you want to work on it some more.
Any questions, board members? Well, from my understanding, working in district, we have a process in place. We have policies in place and investigation, accountability. So I don't know, Mrs. Fisher, so you're saying that there's cases that we're not accountable to?
We're not accountable. It's who you know versus what you do or don't. And my son experienced it firsthand, not to the extent of an abuse, but to the extent of a internal hurt. But if you, in his case, it was preference of a board member over a student. But in this case, the ones that I'm seeing, we're talking physical abuse. And to me, physical abuse should always result in termination. But all community wants to talk. I'll leave it up with them.
Any questions, community members?
Tiffany Hawkins. So I have a question. Finch likes to use the word if it happened. So how do we determine whether it happened or not? I keep hearing these key words, and when there's zero documentation, how will one be proven whether they did or didn't do it when we have 6 years going on of zero documentation of bullying within the district? So I just wanted to know what would you guys base?
Yeah, if means an investigation that she was referring to. So when we get a complaint on X, Y, or Z, we have to prove that it occurred. And so
So when
we
there's
do
no
we do the
documentation, is
investigation.
that
We
because
have,
it's my word against yours
we
then?
have documentation. Oh, yeah. It's just not publicly available.
I've asked for the public documentation. I've yet to
You can
receive
do a
those.
public records request
I
for.
have done that and have not been heard back either.
Well, it takes time to go through the
I've
machine.
also asked for how long. So, no, not getting any response from the district is that this is why there's no documentation, there's no communication. So when you
I
keep
just
saying if
emailed
and
you
it's one
today.
word against another, how do we determine? Because right now that's where we're at. This is Julie's definition on what would be, and this is what the facts are of what a policy states. And same thing with you guys. You have a policy that states you need to abide by your law and your contract. And if there's no documentation, laws are being broken, including staff members below you.
Yeah, that's why we do an investigation. Make sure that we get all of the
I've been
angles
asking
of
for that
it.
investigation. I've been asking, and I just keep getting to push down to a principal who can't answer those questions.
It might be, they might be still investigating. Don't know.
A principal's going to be investigating why you guys don't have documentation or a bullying form online, verbally, or
I think we already hit that
emailed them.
one. Yeah.
Again, that's inaccurate, Dr. Finch, what she's saying. So we have been in communication with the Hawkins to have a meeting with Mr. O.
Okay.
That's been for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, a couple weeks with no responses until today.
And again, that's
Today.
incorrect. Dr. Finch, there's been multiple responses to the.
The same one with you repeating yourself for the last 4 days in a row, stating to reach out to Joey, and Joey has yet to reach out, which is where we have no communication. Joey is not communicating to reach over his staff members, so how do we determine the if, and how did someone violate it if we can't get a staff members to reach out and communicate with us? We're the community, we're the staff members, these are my children that are in your district.
Sounds like we communicated with you multiple times. We're just trying to find a good date that we can all get together.
I've already put in a request for a date, and I wasn't until this morning, and you guys changed the complete date than I asked for.
Obviously, not everybody could be there, so we want everyone
And
to be
you
there.
haven't responded to any of the emails either yourself.
I
neither
just
has
responded
Dr.
today. Did you look in your email?
One about the complaint. You haven't responded to anything else leading up to that self, Mr.
It's called
Finch.
the chain of command.
And your chain of command, Mr. Joey, has not had responded, nor has Julie. So where is the chain of command?
I think
if
they
those
have.
two are not responding, then it needs to go up to the next chain of command.
According to Dr.
And
Z,
again, Dr.
he
Finch,
has.
that's not accurate, what you.
All right.
I'm not accurate?
Correct.
What am I not accurate on?
We are communicating with you multiple times.
The last time Julie responded to me was August 14th. The last time Joey responded was also the 14th. And then the 28th, when I asked for a meeting based off of Paul's response of getting all of you together, and I have yet to receive that. All I keep getting is the principal.
Yeah, the principal is your first point of contact.
No, it's not, because that's not what he had stated. We have already gone through the principal. The principal's already admitted where it went wrong on her end. Now it's a district issue.
I don't believe that is true.
You see, that's where the if keeps coming. You don't believe, just like Miss Julie doesn't believe.
Yeah.
So why are we playing this game of whether you do or you don't believe, or it's an if or if it's if not? What Julie believes and what the policy states. Why aren't we in the district policy and following policy?
Yeah, we'll have a chance to meet with you. It's coming.
It shouldn't have taken this long, sir, and that's the problem. There's no communication at all till today.
Well,
Maybe you guys need to get better at that.
Again, that's incorrect, Dr. Finch.
Jenna, what was that policy that you believe has it clearly listed?
The staff conduct with students, professional boundaries is a document that all of our, it's not a governing board policy. It references all the policies that you mentioned. So it's further explicit guidance to support those policies.
So I would think that we actually needed something in policy to say what is unacceptable. That's my opinion. If the board chooses not to put something like that in policy, then so be it. But that is what I would.
Can I say something? So what you're talking about, the document you're talking about, that's not in the policy? Can you send that to all of us and see if that is something, I don't know if it is, but something that could be incorporated in policy, but I know that when we put things in policy that cover only specific things, it then covers only specific things and doesn't feather outwards. But I think it would be a good thing for us to get that as a copy to see if there's something we can work with that and make that a separate individual policy and not just a guidance.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Orway. Any other questions, board member? Okay.
I can share with you that it specifically identifies GBE, which is staff ethics, GBEB, which is staff conduct, professional conduct, and GBEBB, which is staff conduct with students. And those are our most referenced policies when we're viewing employee discipline. And after your review, it easily, I would imagine, could be added to any of those policies as a supporting document.
Thank you.
I think Mrs. Fisher is looking for it to be a standalone, so if we can look at it through those optics and then figure out how best to serve the students, that would be great.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item C, negotiation solution team, NST. I'll just brief go through this. I do have a PowerPoint if the public wants to see.
The PowerPoint is our manual, correct? I mean, I've read it, but I'm just saying it's the manual, the process that we follow.
Oh, he'll do, okay, thank you. Okay, so I had individuals asking with our budget committee, what's the process, who's involved, and who makes the decisions. So, and the reason I chose the negotiation solution team operating procedures, because they play a major role within the district. For the reason is that they provide surveys to the staff to see what are the needs that they're going to be negotiating within the budget. So the process that they have in place, they have 4 members in each categories. They have administration, they have certified, and they have classified. And the question that have been asked in administrations, how many individuals represent administration, how many certified members or non-members represent certified, and how many classified members or non-members represent classified when it comes down to, to dealing with money. So, Dr. Finch, if you want to explain what.
Sure. I can pass to Jim. Jim actually is the one that runs it. But you are correct. Each of the groups have representation. And I think it was last year or recently, we added some that were not in groups either. And so maybe Jim can talk about them.
President Paperman, the membership is 4 members for each group, and it used to be 3. The 4th one was added for last year, so this will be our 2nd year with having 4 members for each group. So that means there's 4 certified members. 3 of them are members of the association, and 1 of them is a non-association member. That is also true for the classified and for the administration team as well. In addition to that, as it's stated here, one of those 4 members also needs to have fewer than 10 years of tenure in the district.
Okay, so administrations, they have 4 members that is administration, right? And then certified, they have 3 association and 1 non-member, correct?
That is correct.
And then classified, they have, is it 4 members or 3 members and 1 non-member?
It is 3 members and 1 non-member.
Okay,
It's true for all 3 employee groups. So it's 3 members and 1 non-member of all the administration, the certified, and the classified group.
okay, so the reason I'm asking, because I did negotiation myself in a previous district, and we did have, for example, 4 administrators, or 3 administrators, 3 members, 3 non-members, classified 3 members, and, and then non-members put together. So to balance the process, if administration is going to have 4 administration, then transparency should be that the association should have only members, since they're paying, to become a member, you have to, pay a fee. Even parent association, when I was in the parent associations, when my kids were little, we did not allow non-members in the decision making. Yes, they were allowed to be in the decision making, but they had their own groups. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at, maybe, looking at the team so the members can stay with the members and the non-members stays with the non-members and the administrator stays with the administrator. I mean, I did negotiation for 6 years, and to me that was more transparent that, we stick, with our membership, for the reason is that, even with a parent association, the membership, they communicate issues, concerns within the membership. And non-members are not in those group understanding what the issues and concerns are. So to me, for transparency, it would make sense, to group them, members, non-members, administrators, stick with the administrators.
Actually, the previous board before this one is the one that added the extra non-members to it. So the board actually
And it's
prescribed
okay,
it.
and it's okay to have non-members, but, if the administration is going to have 4 members, then, the association should have 4 members too, and the non-members, include them separately. Because, transparency's sake, even, like I said, being in a parent association, we discuss concern and issues that non-members did not understand. So then what happened is that you have, 3 members and 1 non-member, and that non-member has no idea like what's going on, because, within the associations, they don't discuss those concerns. And so, I mean, I don't know if you're getting to the point.
No, I understand. I thought tonight, really what the board's directive was to, and if you, as Ms. Fisher noted, you wouldn't vote on anything tonight anyway, but I think one of the purposes of the NST thing was to talk about what the board recommended for priorities. I think it was something that they were interested in.
And this, to me, this, should also be a priority, because,
okay.
These are decision making. These are major decisions that we're talking about, not thousands of dollars, we're talking about millions of dollars, so you want to be transparent on how we're going to group them.
Can I just interject? Jim, could you please explain the process when the members come together? What the education and learning curve is, member, non-member?
Sure. President Paperman, Ms. Ordway, the group gets together, and we can't even start the meeting without at least 1 member from each of the groups being present. And each of the groups, some of them are here, you might be able to ask them, since it is a study session. They actually represent the entire group. When they do a survey, they do a survey of all classified employees, members and non-members. Same is true for the certified group, as well as for the what we call the building leadership team, the administration. So those individuals are representing themselves, but it is more heavily weighted for the members to be represented. And that was the direction that the board gave to us. Prior to that, it was only association members that were represented. And so we can change, the board can change the configuration of the NST. Our next meeting is scheduled for the 12th of September, which is a week from tonight. But it's the first meeting, and we're still working on getting the final list from everybody. But if the board wishes to change that, I think it's just a matter of making the change in the manual, because that's where this is memorialized.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
To the participants in the NST that are either association members or not, so 3 and 1, the level of knowledge in making the decisions that you're going to be making is given to all. So there is no more information given to a member of an association than one who is not a member of said association. So you're all pretty much given all of the information.
Correct. We meet as a group and share all the same information. In fact, if it weren't for the fact that we have to keep track of who's a member and who's a non-member, I don't know that I would even know, the difference in terms of the participation of the members. Everybody gets one vote when we do get to the point to vote. So the membership's vote is 75% of that group, because they have 3 of the 4 seats for that group.
Yeah, the only difference is that, parent association, teacher association, the only difference is, you take, from the budget committee, and then you meet together as members, to collaborate and what's best for the teachers, what's best for the students, and for the district. So that's the only difference. Yeah, you're not going to know who it is, but, you do meet, as an association. So that's what I'm just saying that, if you have, for administrator, then it's fair to keep it, transparency's sake, balance. And yes, you should have non-members too. I agree with that. But it should not be, taking it away from a parent association or from a teacher association.
Ms. Paperman, I'd
Yes.
also add that our non-members included in the association activities. I'm sure Kelly would speak to this as well. I would agree with Jim that you can't tell the difference between the members, but they are very opening and welcoming, and include our non-members in any budget conversations, any learning, especially when you're a new member to the budget side, the NST process. It can be a huge learning curve, but there, what you're referencing as far as the things that they do discuss, and when they leave a meeting and they want to start preparing for what they might be negotiating for, they're very inclusive of the non-members.
Okay, yeah, so I just want to make sure that, it is a priority because we're talking about millions of dollars. This is decisions that are made, for the district. Other priorities that I'm looking with the NSS, with the budget committee, transparency, like I hear from the public, like, how did they make that decision? How much money, the district is deciding it's going here, it's going there. Is there a video or, or like right now we have a study session, are they able to see that? Are they able to see, well, how did they come up with that decision? Or is it just closed door that no one knows and it's private? So that's a priority that I would say that's important to include the community for them, to see what's happening, like what, the budget that we get, how is it distributed, how are the decisions making, how are we bargaining, for our students, for our teachers, and even maintaining our district.
President Paperman, so I think we go about that in 2 different ways. you said community input. So community input is through a budget process that we start typically in December, specifically with the community. And we intentionally start that early in the process to be able to get the list of priorities from the community as we continue to meet with the NST to provide some background information about the available resources that we have. And then the NST is the one that makes the salary recommendation based on the input from the governing board and from the community budget committee that we also run. And then to your point about they are not videotaped, the meetings, probably because I'm presenting, and nobody wants to see me in that capacity. Very few people, I should say. But we do generate minutes from each meeting and post them on the portal for people to view.
I mean, it would be great if we can have those videos, from community saying, well, how do I get those? I'm like, well, I don't know if they actually do videos, like, we do a study session, to be transparent to the community, that they can go on our website and look, well, like, what is the NST doing? Can I watch the whole thing? Like, what, how they're making decisions. So I'm just talking about transparency, to make that a priority. So, so individuals don't think, oh, so they're making decisions, in closed doors that no one knows and it's top secret, or, we want to be transparent with our parents, with our, teachers and with our community. I mean, it would be great if we can have that just like a study session or us, doing a board meeting.
Mr. Miglerino, you did say that we post the minutes.
We don't call them minutes. I think I did refer to them as minutes.
You
We
did.
call them a summary. So what we have found is because the meetings can sometimes be lengthy, people do appreciate that they are summarized in kind of a brief document. But we review the summaries as the NST before we post them. So it's not like one person is authoring them. My admin assistant does compile them. We bring them back to the NST. They are read, agreed upon, and then we post them after there's an agreement. And there have been times when we have made edits just to make sure that we're not using inflammatory words or including information that makes sense to the general public, just because sometimes it's the forest amongst the trees for us, because we're dealing with this on a regular basis. We want them to be available to be read by somebody that doesn't have to sit through the meetings, because the whole reason to have this group is to have a representative group represent each of those. So we're not negotiating with 4,000 and people. We're meeting with 16.
You're meeting with 16 and negotiating for 4,000.
Correct.
Perhaps it could be put in a more prominent space, or we could make some kind of something that says, hey, here are the minutes. The meetings are starting, here are the minutes. The summary.
Summaries, yes.
The summaries. I think that being involved in negotiations for a large company, when you do have your representatives that you're negotiating with, having that taped is not necessarily conducive to having, help me out with the word there, Jim, productive, because people get animated, and once you get to know each other, you can do these things. But I don't think it's not being transparent when the summary or arriving at a decision coming from a group of facts and data, and you have your summary. So I don't know how productive.
And it's
one would
open door
be.
policy, right? Like anyone can come in,
you can
and
s-
because that's one of the questions that
You
I'm
can sit in there, you
asked,
just can't
Yeah,
talk.
yeah, you can sit, and that anyone can, so like post, anyone wants to come and see, like when they're doing the budget committee, the decision making, and
Ms. Paperman,
yeah.
that conference room is really small.
We've had
Oh,
to
the conference
move.
room.
We've had to move the venue. One of the challenges that we would have about videotaping it is we don't have those facilities in every location. And because the group has gotten larger by adding one non-member, we have moved the meetings to the Innovation Center. So they are large enough for, people to join, as, spectators if they wish. But there aren't video capabilities in the Innovation Center. So that would be a challenge. We'd have to find a venue to be able to do a video recording, but they would be open for people to attend and sit in the audience, not necessarily participate, but anybody that usually comes has something to say typically, whether it's before or after the meeting or sometimes even during the meeting. But that happens very infrequently, I will say.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Oh, there's a speaker there. Yes, you may speak, yes.
My name is Steve Lund. I'm president of the Classified Association. I just wanted to add a couple of things. One, my concern about a video transparency. I'll refer back, I don't remember if Kelly was in those meetings at the time, but about 7 or 8 years ago when we were doing some conversations about cuts because there wasn't enough money and we were trying to figure out things you talk about in those meetings are just the what if things. What if we cut those special programs? It wasn't intended to be a serious thing. It was, well, what if we cut all the paras? What if we cut, something else? And it was, where are we going to get the money? Well, I know it was the next day that the district thing blew up because we were going to get rid of the Renaissance program. Wasn't part of the conversation. It was, what do you cut if you don't have enough money? People, programs, things like that. So the transparency thing of the video, I would be concerned with only because of the potential misconception of things that are said in those conversations. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is, and I've said it before, the 3 employee groups that are represented and authorized, so to speak, by the board work very closely and I would say very well together, trying to solve the problems of where the needs are, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. I know that we've made concessions, or I should say it that way. There have been concessions made to help classified with certain problems we have and trying to fix things. Bus drivers, paras, custodians. I know in the past we've done things with some teacher things and when we realigned things. I've been in there too many years, but I just want to make sure that it's said out loud from at least our group, and I think Kelly is shaking her head yes, and I'm not going to speak for the administrators because I always get in trouble. The transparency thing, I understand. I think the summary is our transparency because some of the things we talk about aren't things that we really mean. They're just things, if we have to do cuts, where do you cut? Do we cut the board members? Well, we don't pay anything anyway, so it doesn't work very well. What do we cut? The electrician? I got about 2 years left. I guess I'm not going to complain too much, but the misconception when we have those conversations, we clear up in the meeting before we leave. We've all made it clear of what we intended to say by that. So I guess I'm rambling now. So unless there was something else that you would like to ask of the Classified Association, I'll go sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the community members that have asked for transparency, so like you said, you provide the summary, right? The summary is open door policy that anyone can come in, and it's posted on the district page, I assume, right? For them to know that there's going to be a budget committee, so that way if anyone wants to come in, they can come and sit in.
President Paperman, yes, but just to be clear, because this is a work team and not a committee, it is posted on the portal, not on the external website. But when we get to the budget committee with the community, yes, that is posted on the external website, and we do solicit membership into that committee every year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. And all I'm looking is for transparency, listening to what community members have to say. No one has any questions, then we will. Mrs. Fisher?
I thought this item was something completely different when we talked about it. We first put it on. It was during last year's budget that we were talking, and we said, well, we wish we could have done this, or we wish we would have given this direction or that direction. And so it was, well, let's put it on an agenda to talk about before NST gets started and whatnot, so the board can say, hey, this is a direction we're interested in. Is that not what we're doing?
Personally, I couldn't tell you what we were doing because there was no direction given and no framework, nothing given in the administrative content or anything. So I had no idea what this was going to be for.
Right, and that's the problem I have with it just being thrown on a list somewhere, because I vaguely remember the conversation. But if it's just thrown on a list and then thrown on an agenda, it's meaningless.
Yeah, that was my point.
Now-
I was saying that's what I thought it was going to be about, budget priorities.
And that's what I thought it was.
But Ms.
I thought-
Paperman's
I
saying
thought
that is a
at the
priority.
At the prior meeting, or this was a year ago or so, when we were adopting, that there were concerns, and it was like, well, why didn't the board speak up ahead of time? The opportunity was never there. And so I thought that was more what this was for. But without really knowing and it just being thrown on an agenda,
Well, I don't know, whoever put it on the agenda might have given a description, so I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was a while ago. It was about the priorities and how the NSST and
so does the board have priorities to provide to anyone? Is there a direction?
I
they would
wouldn't
like?
have anything right now because I didn't know that that's what I
What-
was supposed to
what
be
it was.
doing.
So I
There's
guess
there's no
Old board?
direction.
Was it with the old board? Because you said it was like a year ago?
I think it was
There
during,
was,
I
yeah,
do
something
believe
like
it was
that, yeah.
during the old board that hey, we, in the future, could provide information. And I think it was just put on a list and then thrown onto this meeting.
No, I don't know who made the
So-
agenda, so I don't know.
You wouldn't have done any different. Well, maybe you would have, because you're actually one of the board members who was spoken to, who knows facts.
I don't make the
The rest of us
agendas.
don't.
Ms. Paperman makes the agendas.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
well, maybe what we're looking for is to have our priorities sent in an email so that when you guys meet on Tuesday, or guys and gals, wherever, she's still back there.
The 12th, I think, is their first meeting.
Is that enough
Yeah,
time?
that first meeting is very introductory, so
Okay, so
I
we're
would not
okay.
say that anything needs to be decided between
I
now
would say
and.
just put it on a discussion in a future agenda.
Well, I was gonna say,
And talk
or-
about it, because the public wants to hear it. They're getting tired of sending these background emails
So-
that we never get to see.
So Jim, pick the correct board meeting that we should have this discussion item, so we are not behind you, we're kind of ahead of you. I meant please, if I didn't say please.
Okay, so we're going to move on to district staffing. So I did get a lot of questions on the district staffing, which I believe Dr. Finch, the first three, the communities and staff can look for a district staffing data request. So they need to make a request, right? For them to get like information on district staffing. And the reason that a lot of parents and community members were asking about district staffing, they wanted to see, like, how many administrators, how many directors, for the reason is that at the schools where the children are attending, like, there's, bullying is going on. We have students, that they need more counseling. We have, students, that homeless, that probably need social workers. So they were trying to come up, with thinking out of the box. What can we do to, to get more, maybe dean of students, so we have less bullying in the schools, because administrators, a lot of parents were telling me that their hands are tied, they're dealing with a lot of things, running their school, but at the same time, they have X amount of students that need that support, with behavior. So many parents were saying, well, can we look at the district staffing so maybe we can get a dean of student, in those, particular schools to support those administrators. And maybe we will have less concerns with bullying, because I know that's one of the major issues, that I'm hearing a lot from parents. So, and this is why I brought in district staffing, because of the concerns that are happening right now. Uh, so I posted this PowerPoint. The community can look through that. I did not get, by the district, I did not get how much administration, like what's the population administration, but if community members or parents want to look, they can look at Arizona Department of Education, SDER, which is School District Employee Report, if you want to look. The last one that I saw, I don't know if it's updated, is August 26, 2023. And it has, like we have one superintendent, for example, we have, 4 assistant superintendent. And it has all the information there if you want to see, what does the, what does the district have in different staffing, in teaching and certified, classified, and all that. And then maybe communicate, with the district, with those concerns that you have, that we need to start looking, allocating our money to provide more into the schools, support those principals that need support, when they have X amount of students that, are facing challenges, with bullying, homeless, students that have, they need support, like with their mental need, and we don't have the resources to provide that support. We're leaving everything mostly, to our administrators. And then what happened is that since we don't have the resources, and then then issues come up, and then that's when parents are saying, well, what's going on with this? Well, why did this happen to my child? And then, administration, they're going in different directions, trying to run their school, look at academics, and not having, a dean of student or someone to give them that extra hand to, to help with the discipline. So the areas that parents were asking, like counselors, social workers, mental health, dean of students, to put more money for our kids, more money in the campuses. And this is why, I put this on the agenda. That's something that the district needs to look at. Maybe we will have less concerns, with, especially right now, the dealing with bullying, which is, this has been going on even when I came on the board, and even when my kids were attending Deer Valley, bullying was happening. And then, to me, when parents were explaining what's happening in the schools and why they see it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when my kids were in school, there was bullying happening, and the principals, their hands were tied. They need that extra support in order to cut down on some incidents. So this is why I put it here. Maybe, the district can think out of the box, so we can support those parents that, are crying out that, this needs to stop. We need to support our kids. We need to keep them safe.
Mrs.
Yes.
Paperman, are you looking for us to relook at what the numbers are that perhaps qualify? I mean, I know we have different ways that we qualify campuses to have deans, and I know we're sharing counselors and so on and so forth, but maybe we could have a report on how we determine the deans and the assistant principal numbers. I mean, the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory. For the social workers, I mean, we get the ones that we can, that are available to have. So maybe just a number, because you guys don't know what the numbers are that will qualify a school or the reasons why. So maybe just a little report on that. Dr. Finch, somebody?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding a lot with social workers and counselors is that we just don't have them. It's
Right.
not that there's it's not, yeah, exactly, that's what I mean. It's not that our district is not trying to have them in our schools, it's that they physically don't exist, so.
And that's the challenge. It's challenging because, like we heard, that our kids, they need help. If it's mental health, if it's bullying, and, anything at this point, anything that we can do, to support, like those schools, those administrators that need the support.
This comes at a
Yeah.
state funding level, so you
Right,
can talk
right,
to the
right.
superintendent of
Yeah.
public instruction. I'm
Yeah.
sure he would, some ideas there, talk to him
Right.
about that.
And this is why I'm saying to the district, well, you got to look at the budget, look at the priorities, If we're hearing from parents, do we want to hear, that we have issues every year, or we're there to fix the issues? So that's the point that I was hearing from parents, that this is, this goes on year after year after year, so we need to prioritize, like our title money is going, our budget is going, and to make sure that we're taking care of those issues, so we don't have them year after year after year. So this is just ideas that I got from parents, that are the challenges that they're facing right now.
Ms.
So,
Paperman,
yeah.
this is something that's been going on for a long time. I mean, we can sit here and talk about ESA vouchers, and that's why we don't have the funding for this. It's not a matter of
That's not
our
true.
staff not, or budgeting the correct amount of money to certain departments, is that we don't have the funding from the state. Our public education is in crisis. So we can talk all day about what we want, but until we have funding for it, it's not going to happen.
Well, and this is why the parents were looking at the, what do we have at the district that, that we can support, Mrs. Fisher.
But Jenny, this narrative that ESAs are the reason is a fallacy. It is not.
I said that was one topic we could talk
It's-
about. There's many, many, many
However,
reasons.
when you asked this question, we quickly were provided a 10-year picture of what the district office looked like, so it can look like, oh, we only have 1.7 increase. But reality is, in 2015, we charged the superintendent with reducing the senior level administration, flattening the organization.
That was
And-
for
and-
cuts that we had to cut that
And
year.
he did so.
We cut a bunch of things. We
He
cut
did so.
counselors that year,
And
librarians,
he cut the district office staff significantly.
The reason
special ed.
that was is because the board directed them to go as far away from the
And
classroom.
Immediately.
That was the reason.
Special ed was whacked, too.
Immediately upon having a board who would not care how big the district office became, all those positions were immediately reinstated.
That is incorrect.
That's incorrect.
On two levels. Mrs. Fisher, I was on the board, and the reason we started to return people to their positions was because one person was doing the job of 5. We had don't shake your head because you
No,
weren't
I am
here.
shaking my head because I want.
Or shake it all the time. I don't
And
care what you do, but if you are
can-
going to state reasons for things happening, have the information. You can say what you think,
Have
my
the information,
opinion,
it's in a board
say your
meeting.
opinion.
It's in a board meeting. It's not an opinion. It's fact.
It isn't a fact. I am
It is.
telling you right now, it's not a fact. Dr. Galligan, were you here when we stripped our everything that didn't walk and talk in a classroom? And how long did it take us to reassemble someone's position where they weren't doing 5 or 6 jobs? And you can't do 5 or 6 jobs great. So when we had, I'm sorry, go ahead. Just answer my question.
President Paperman, Ms. Ordway, one of the areas that I cut from CIA was our coordinator who oversaw our librarians and our library clerks. We have not replaced that position, and there is a definite need, and I will be bringing that to cabinet And we just met with our library clerks on Friday, and they are in desperate need of that type of support, someone who has that skill set. That's just one example.
President Paperman, if I could.
Mr. Carver?
Thank you. So the report total of 3,957, is that the head count that we're eligible for or the head count that we have?
That's what we have.
That's what we have. So I guess what I would like to see is what are we able to have and what are those positions that we're missing compared to how this was broken out? And I'm not looking for you guys to have to spend a boatload of hours doing that. I'm just wondering, I mean, there's some concern up here that we don't have some people that we should have, and maybe we have too many people over here that maybe we don't need. But 3957 is what we have. In the past, we've always run about a 10% opening. So do we normally run about 4,400 on head count? Is that a little high now? Because I understand we're better staffed than what we usually have been.
We estimate usually around 4,000. You can go a little higher if you're going to talk about temporary workers, but a little under 4,000.
So we're only short about 50 people this year, and that's pretty amazing. But I guess what I'm trying to figure out is out of those 50, what does that look like with what we're really missing? You know, are they certified? Are they classified? Are they a little bit of both? And then just for apples to apples sake, and I know that Deer Valley isn't like any other district, but would it be possible for the concerns of everybody and what it is that I'm hearing, if we saw what personnel staffing look like at the district that resembles us best according to population? Could we see something like that in the near future, just to?
We can give you, in fact, that's the brilliant way to do it is called a comparison. Data out of context is worthless in my mind. So if you run, I love longitudinal data. I also love comparison data. So relationship to our peers and the state. We can give you, for example, administrators against our peers, the cost per administrator, the students per, we give that report a lot. We can assemble it and how many students we have per administrator. And then obviously the OPEB liability is a big number that totally impacts our system. It looks like we're heavy in administration, but we are actually super light compared to our peers because we put about $4 million a year from our golden handcuffs into, that's how the state required us to account for it. So we can get that report for you.
Right. And I think it's important. I mean, comparing ourselves to our neighbors is important. Obviously, we're a different animal, like I said, and we would need to do what's best for Deer Valley. But it is good to know where we sit with like and kind districts around us to know, are we running lean? Are we running fat? You know, in different departments. So if we could get that, I think that'd be helpful for this conversation.
I do think we already have that. The problem being is when you start, there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And when you start looking at statistics and you want to compare any district to, say, Phoenix Union, it's so far skewed that it won't make sense. Then you want to take it into even, you know, Tucson, is it Tucson Unified? I think it is Tucson Unified. They have superintendents, assistant superintendents, deputy superintendents, a superintendent for the superintendent, and then assistants for the superintendent of the superintendent to the superintendent. And when you get to the top 2 or 3 levels, they don't even have a job description because their job is to talk about what direction things might go. And then they will assign it to the deputy of the deputy to the, so you have some districts that are so seriously fat. And they're generally also the districts that have desegregation funds, like Phoenix Union to the tune of $56 million. And their administration is in the 100 club. It's a joke. Their secretaries make $100,000 a year. Their administrators make in the $250,000, $500,000 ballpark. So we got to be very careful with some comparative analysis, because just because our peers are not focusing on actually getting the funds to the students, doesn't mean we need to follow that model. So I would just caution us.
We would agree with that,
Jim,
yeah.
can you, we totally agree with that logic. Could you explain who our peer districts are? Jim, I know you use them all the time. Jenna uses them as well.
We have two different comparable references. One is what we call the comparable districts. They're all large K-12 districts in the valley, so that there's not a geographic difference. So it's Peoria, Paradise Valley, Chandler, Gilbert, Scottsdale. And then we throw Dysart in just because when this was originally agreed upon, we had Scottsdale instead of Dysart because Scottsdale was larger, Dysart was smaller. Dysart has grown, Scottsdale has shrunk, and now Dysart's bigger than Scottsdale. So we'll throw Dysart in along with Scottsdale. They're all large K-12 districts in the valley that we feel are comparable, and the populations are very similar. There's also what's referred to as the peer group, and that's the group that the Auditor General uses, and they will throw in all of the what they call very large districts in the state, which would include Tucson and Phoenix Union and Mesa. We think Mesa is a little bit different than the other districts, being as large as they are. There are about 60,000 students, but the comparable districts are the ones that we like to refer to when we're doing any comparative analysis.
Okay, thank you. So, this is just, thinking out of the box, the concerns that parents have. And, we have heard so much about bullying and the principals, they need support. So maybe, see what changes can we make so, we can cut down on those issues. Okay,
Ms.
so we're going
Paperman, I
to
think
move on to.
it would be important to also point out in the last pre-COVID years, we did adjust the staffing standard in case the public isn't aware, those parents are not aware. There, I believe, and I could be corrected if I went back and looked at my list, but I believe we only have campuses that do not have dean support right now while the rest of them do. And that was not the case previously. And the only reason that they don't is because they don't have the title threshold necessary to trigger additional staffing, or they are under 450 students. So one of those campuses, I believe, is under 200 students, and so is the other one. So we believe that the principal can manage most of what is necessary. And then Gary and his team and Gail and her team, we have added a significant amount of counseling and social worker support that we didn't used to have. So if they're not aware of that, that could be something that would be very helpful to know. And that is not to say that we're not always reviewing what we need moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the next item, E, Student Activity Fund Review. Mrs. Fisher?
I think we're out of time to really hit this one. Honestly, I'm going to simply read an email because there keeps going to this whole, oh, we don't do that. I spoke with the Office of the Auditor General regarding the board approvals with student activities specific to addenda. I really appreciate him taking the time to review the inquiry with me. Their office is a great resource. They do not provide actual legal opinion on things, just guidance. I knew that, but it has been a few years. Below, I will summarize the points to assist the district in understanding what I found. 1, they cannot provide a legal opinion. Their office provides a USFR and can give general guidance, but they clearly state that it is not legal advice. 2, we should seek legal advice on this subject to ensure the proceeding appropriately. Problem being, when you do that, our legal advice is often guided to fit within our district. 3, in seeking the advice, we need to ask about undue influence. This was a point that was specifically made by the Auditor General because undue influence regarding the approval process as well as consideration of funds in regarding salary and addenda. So when we approve here at the board meeting, before the kids have ever even had it presented to them, such as approvals over the summer before the students are even in the clubs or the teams or whatever, at some point they're going to be unduly influenced because, well, this is what the board passed. Number 4, a best practice may be to use tax credit or other funds for anything like salaries or addenda, since it's hard to determine the undue influence. 5, student activities funds are clearly a fund we are fiduciaries of, even if they removed some of the language. And we should follow what is in the USFR on the subject, keeping in mind that it is not all inclusive, thus the need for the legal opinion. Now, we did get a legal opinion with the guidance of what we were doing to justify what we were doing. That does not mean it's legal. It does not mean it's sound advice. It just means, okay, this is what we're doing, justify it for us. And I'm sorry, but that is not an appropriate legal opinion in my view. And so I don't think we have time to fully digest this one. I think the district should actually have an opportunity, or maybe even clubs, with what we're doing, because it seems like every meeting or quite a few meetings, we have the board approving that the students will raise money to pay for addendas that we approved. And I just think that's concerning. I don't think that we should be indebting a student who just wants to play football or basketball or whatever the heck it is, or be in a club. I don't think we should be indebting them to then have to be a fundraiser door to door or otherwise. And if anything we do is supplanting, I would say that would be it.
Well, we
That's my
can take
opinion.
your advice there too and run it back through a lawyer to see if there's a way we can improve our process, and we'll get back to you. We can do that.
Okay, so Mrs. Orway, do you want an executive session for safety,
Oh,
Watson?
real quick,
Oh,
if Mrs. Fisher could send that list to the rest of us, that would be helpful to have to refer to. I was looking at an executive session, and that would be Gary to figure out the best time for going over our safe school. It's not what I'm looking for. What? Thank you. Yes. Just for new board members and to see what we have added, because I know that we had Alice training last year.
okay, you got that, Dr. Finch? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're done. Thank you for your time, for being here. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Let's adjourn the meeting at.
All those in favor?
I think it's
Say aye.
9:15.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Okay, we're done.